Directing traffic, gonna go deep, has a man deep, it is caught for the touchdown, Corey Davis!
What does he do? Attacks leverage. If he's outside leverage, he doesn't want you to beat him outside. So stem towards him, hold him outside, stamp outside. Drive face, full cell vertical, get into the blind spot, and he absolutely burns him. Corner is lost. He literally has no idea where Wilson is.
Really high floor, really high ceiling. We could be talking about the best corner in the league. Sauce can do that.
This is actual film. This is actual football talk. It's a football show. We're supposed to talk football.
And you are watching another edition of Blewett Blitz. Kyle, it's been about 2 weeks. Every time we start to get like up to the show, I'm starting to get like, miss Kyle a little bit. 2 weeks is kind of a long enough break, so I'm happy to have you back again.
Yeah, I thought about texting you the other night when I told you the news that I just told you pre-show, and I was like, I haven't seen him in person. I'll just tell him then. It's a little bit better than through a little text message. So, yeah, feelings mutual. You do get on my nerves sometimes, but I don't know.
You still miss me.
That's why we're friends. Yeah.
Did you? I was thoughts about the Super Bowl, by the way, because I know your dad's a Chiefs fan. So did you watch it with your dad? Was he freaking out? Did your dad think it was holding? Did he not think it was holding? How was your Super Bowl?
Oh, well, you can obviously know what he thought about that call. But yeah, I did watch it with him. It was quite enjoyable. It was me, my mom, my younger brother's fiance, and it was just the four of us. So it was pretty cool. But yeah, I watched it with my dad, and he was so much more calmer this time around than the previous two Super Bowls. I mean, obviously they got stomped against the Buccaneers in that Super Bowl, but the one against the Niners, he was nervous all game. But surprisingly, I mean, like it was 24-14 at half, if I'm not mistaken. He was really calm. But everyone was, saying like Eagles are the most complete team, but he wasn't really that worried. But yeah, it was fun. I'm really happy for him, man. Like, cause like I said before, he went 50 years without seeing his team in the Super Bowl. And it was funny after the game, he says to me, cause like I'm rooting for his team the whole game. And, I kind of feel weird when some people say like, oh, I got two teams. Some people say, oh, I got an AFC team and I got an NFC team. I personally don't have that, but like, I mean, like, I guess if the Jets are out of it, I do root for the Chiefs for his sake. And I grew up like, he did get some Chiefs memorabilia for us and stuff. And like I said, like Len Dawson and Joe Montana, who was a one-time Chiefs quarterback for a brief period of time. So like, there is a part of me that has an affinity for the Chiefs. I did like Mahomes. Always reference that phone call where I called you when you were shit-faced drunk, and I said we need to draft Mahomes at 6, and you were like, anyway, that was a fun time. I really wish the Jets took him.
Thanks, Kyle. Let's put my business out there. I called you were drunk.
Come on. Hey, come on, man. You talk about you talk about how you drink so much on here all the time. Hey, if you come to the J1 tailgate, you better take a shot with me at 8 a.m. Anyway,
it's the only shot. It's the only shot I do all day. Is that one shot, Kyle?
Yeah. So anyway, I bring up the story because at the end of the Super Bowl, I'm about to go home, and he's like, I'm like congratulating him and stuff, and he's like, hey, I hope I get to see your team win a Super Bowl before I pass away. So my response to him was, I hope I get to see him win a Super Bowl before I pass away, because being a Jets fan, you start to worry, man. Like, will it ever happen?
Rumors, and obviously, I'm hoping by this time next week. I don't know if I'm going to do a show on Wednesday or Thursday next week on myself. Maybe it'll be with Kyle if the Jets do get a quarterback. But within the next week or two, we should have our guy. I'm thinking at least next week or two. That's all I can handle. But
I think so.
Follow-up question: you're talking about rooting for the Chiefs, like your second team, even though you don't necessarily believe in them. And I was kind of with you just because my grandpa's a Chiefs fan, even though I don't like his brother. But nonetheless. The Jets just completely disband. They're gone. They do not exist anymore. Who is Kyle Smith's favorite? Or do you have a new favorite team you root for, or do you just watch the NFL in general?
That's a tough question. I would still. Football is too cool of a sport. I like it too much. I don't know. Like, it's just, I can't really explain it. It's like really addictive to watch. It's a really, really great game.
I get it. I get you.
So I obviously would still watch the game. I feel like if I were to root for the Chiefs, people are like, oh, you're a front runner. But then again, so it's like you're in this weird spot where it's like, who cares what other people think? I'm going to do what I want. But at the same time, there is a part of me that wouldn't want to do that. So I don't really have a good answer to your question.
I think my heart says Packers because I've always respected that organization and the people are so damn nice there. But at the same point, I need to be able to go to games. Like I love that tailgating environment. I love that.
Yeah.
So it need to be a local team. So it was funny. Me and my friend were just talking about this the other day. I would maybe the Ravens, maybe.
Yeah.
But I still don't love it. Obviously, hopefully the Jets just don't completely liquefy and disappear. But nonetheless, Kyle, big week for the Jets. We'll get into this really quickly. Then we'll say hello to the chat. We'll get into some of the newer stuff about the quarterbacks. Lamar potentially being a little bit more available or potentially available than we thought maybe a week or 2 or 3 ago. The Jets made a hire of Todd Downing as the pass game coordinator, which I basically charted one game of him and noticed some of his personnel usage and some of his concepts and stuff, which we'll go over in a little bit of Kyle. But did you watch the NFL honors, or did you at least catch wind, obviously, of the fact that the Jets had the defensive rookie of the year, offensive rookie of the year? Revis got in first ballot, and then Klecko was like a senior nominee, or whatever the hell that was. So he's been in there for a few years, but obviously a big day for the Jets, and legitimately probably one of the biggest days since they won the Super Bowl. Obviously, we can talk about some playoff wins and beating the Pats and in 2010 and all that stuff, but to have 4 guys win awards, the NFL honors, obviously puts the Jets on the map a little bit and kind of eases some minor pains of the season.
Yeah, I mean, that's 4 really big awards. I mean, how many Hall of Famers spent the majority of, like, how many Jets who are Hall of Famers spent the majority of their career with the Jets? Is it 10 or more, or is it less?
No.
I really don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. We can look up a list, but I don't think so.
I remember going to a Jets game back in 2015 with a guy who I'm like acquaintances with, I guess I would say, and he was like saying, like, man, the Jets really have no history. I was like, yeah, you kind of bring up a good point. I mean, like, even just look at some of the guys who were like in the Ring of Honor. It's like, yeah, they were good players and stuff, but it's like, how good of players are they compared to some of these Hall of Famers? Like some organizations like it, just like, couple dozen Hall of Famers and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a really historic day for the Jets, and I'm really happy. I mean, like, you have to be like I said in the intro, man, like Sauce really high ceiling. I mean, he goes out and wins first team All Pro, and it's a very well deserved first team All Pro. It's like, CJ Mosley, did he really deserve second team All Pro? I mean, like, there probably were other guys who were more deserving of it than him, but Sauce definitely deserved the award that he got. Garrett Wilson, I mean, like, I thought Kenneth Walker, if they gave it to him, I think he would have been justified in getting it, just because, like, his team also did more. But Garrett Wilson, like, at the same time, like, he was hard to stop. He showed up week in, week out, and he did it with, like, this just such uncertainty at quarterback play. So
just a shit situation. Let's just be real.
Yeah. And Joe Cook was a little bit before my time, but like a guy who dominates on multiple positions on the defensive line. So really have to have respect for that. By all accounts, good dude too. I know my father said he met him once at a racetrack, and said he was really nice when he met him. Let's see. And Revis, dude. I mean, we both grew up, like, that was our kind of like really coming into football. I mean, like, you watched the Jets a little bit closer before then, but 2009, 10, those are really the first years I started really, really following the Jets super closely. And
balls deep, as I'd like to say. Yep.
Yeah. And so like, there's a part of me that didn't like Revis' second stint with the Jets, because obviously, when you lose that athleticism, especially at corner, there's not so much you can do, but it just at times, like, clearly he lost not just a step, he lost multiple steps, but it did look like he was disinterested and not trying.
Yeah.
And then there's also the part of me that thinks like, okay, he had multiple, contract standoffs. So I don't know. I mean, like, I'm not the hugest fan of his personality, but he's certainly a great talent, and the Jets drafted him. So
Yeah. So Sauce was the obvious choice. I don't think anybody even got close to him with first place votes. Garrett Wilson and Kenneth Walker were close. Kenneth Walker actually got more first place votes than Garrett Wilson, but because he got more second place votes, the new voting system, Garrett Wilson was it, and he deserves it, dude. Like, put put Jimmy Garoppolo here or Ryan Tannehill for 17 games, and what is his stats look like?
You say that even with Tannehill, as much as you hate Tannehill.
But he's better than Zach Wilson. I got some news for you. It's like 1,400 yards, you're talking about, most likely, or something like that. Klecko making the Pro Bowl at 3 different positions. Obviously, again, like you said, before our time, so we only get to kind of watch back to him. We don't really remember him because we weren't alive. And then Revis, like you said, like he's on my favorite Jet because of how he handled his career here and how he left and whatever else. Even though he
won a Super Bowl with the Pats,
winning a Super Bowl with the Pats, the contract standoff, all that stuff. And like you said, 2015, that's a bad taste in your mouth. Obviously, that one game he got absolutely roasted by Hopkins. and then we're fighting for our playoff.
Sammy Watkins, final game of the year.
Fighting for our playoff lives. Us in Buffalo, or at least, I was in Buffalo. I think you were in Buffalo too, right? I always forget.
No, I actually wasn't for that game.
And the whole game was just smoke route, 5 yards, smoke route, 5 yards, because he was playing 12 yards off of Watkins, and they just nickeled and dimed us down the field, and it was terribly frustrating. So not necessarily the best memories of him as a person here. Like, I didn't love his personality, but you're talking about the most dominant Jets player in our history. Like, at his position, Namath is not talked about with one of the best quarterbacks. Like, he's in that group of best quarterbacks, but obviously the Marinas and the Montanas and Brady and all those guys are well above Namath in NFL history. And we don't really have another guy who's kind of top 2, top 3, the best ever at their position. And Revis is clearly that. I think you can make a legitimate argument for him without having Jets fan goggles on, to say that he is the best corner of all time, or at least the peak of what he was the best of all time. They make some arguments for other guys, but dude, he was obviously pretty legit. And then again, the bringing both the rookie and the offensive or defensive rookie and the offensive rookie of the year awards home in the same night was the only time that's been done, or the third time in history, Kyle, if I'm not mistaken. It was the Saints with Kamara and Lattimore, and then like the 1967 Lions or some shit, or 1976 Lions or whatever that was way a while ago. So good night for the Jets. With that being said, let's say hello to some people in the chat. Eagle Fang, I'm starting to gain doubt that the Jets will end up with a bottom tier quarterback. You're starting to gain doubt that the Jets will end up with.
I think he means like I'm starting to further believe that we're not going to get one of these guys we keep talking about.
The way that's worded, Eagles, mean that you think that you're getting a good quarterback. By the way, so and this is the fear, Kyle. Is like if they miss out on the Aaron Rodgers thing, who is now going into his darkness retreat. I know the reporting was messed up on it, and I kind of understand him clapping back a little bit at Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter, like saying, hey, these guys don't know what the hell they're talking about. Like I've said, it was going to be this day the whole time, and they're just assuming that I'm going to go this time, and they're assuming I'm going to make a decision, all this bullshit, whatever. But I thought he was supposed to go on Monday, and now he's going at the end of the week. So is he going today? Is he going Friday? Is he going Saturday? He's in there for 4 days. He never said on Pat McAfee that right as he gets out, he's going to decide what he's willing or what he wants to do at quarterback. He might have already told the Packers. He might, again, wait until directly after. He might wait until the week after. So with just the volatility of that situation, with him retiring or staying there, getting traded to the Raiders, it's just scary. And that's part of the problem with going for him is that I've said it a million times now. I get in a vacuum wanting Rodgers over Carr, but it's a lot more risky because if you miss out on Carr, go after Rodgers. There's not a lot of fallback options we really like. So I rather swing and hit the double, the triple, than go for the home run. And if I don't hit that home run, I'm going to strike out because there's really not much there, So that's why I've been in the Carr camp the entire time. Obviously, you don't have to trade draft picks. He's going to be here for a little bit longer. In a vacuum, I do understand though wanting Rodgers over Carr, but obviously it's quite a complex situation. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like we haven't heard many reports about the Jets really being tied to Carr. I mean, it seems like
so the only thing with that was them and the Saints were the only teams to inquire about a trade for him. So they might have called the Raiders and the Raiders.
Oh, really? I didn't see that. Where'd that come from?
That was a legit report. It wasn't some like Dov Kleiman or NFL rumors or any of that bullshit. The Jets actually called them about trading for him. They just obviously they didn't work out a price for him, so he was never able to visit. But they might have called and said, "Oh, third round pick," and they said, "No, screw you, only a sixth," and they never agreed on trade compensation, so never visited here. But they at least called the Raiders about the trade for him, so they're definitely interested.
Okay, I mean, and I don't know. It seems like being that he went pretty publicly with it. I mean, like it seems like Sauce Gardner was talking to him about it, and he says, "Oh, let's just say I know a little something." So I don't know. Take that for what it is. I mean, like no players really know anything, but I don't know. I mean, I just get the sense from the things I'm reading that the Jets really are mostly in for Rodgers, but I don't like based on what you said, like I don't really see how you could be like, if you do miss out on one of these two guys, it doesn't seem like you're getting Lamar Jackson, and I don't know. I really wouldn't really want him for what you'd have to give up to get him. Yeah. And Jimmy Garoppolo's a significant downgrade in my opinion. I don't know. It is pretty tough, but I don't know. It's weird. Like we've talked about this a lot, but the more that it seems like and this is like, how much is my bias working in here and just my, my fandom working in, But the more it seems like Rodgers is going to be the reality, and I don't know, it just seems like that the Jets have their eyes set on him and they're willing to wait. That's just the vibe that I get.
I agree.
I start to get more excited about that one. It's like, oh, well, maybe this is the option. And as you're even talking about it, you're saying like, I'd rather have the double or the triple as opposed to the home run. It's like, yeah, but we're talking about quarterback here, and it's the most position in all sports.
Yeah.
But then I start to also think about like, yeah, but you can also win with this guy, and he could be here for the next 5, 6, 7 years, and you wouldn't have to give up the pick. And like, who the hell really knows anything? I mean, was it either Schefter or Kuiper said something yesterday that they believe that at minimum it's going to be a first round pick. But then I don't know, Scott Mason had a good tweet where he said like, according to Breer and according to this person, Rodgers could
it's all different trade composition. Yeah.
It's like, who the hell really knows? But I don't know. I mean, like, I feel like if you're dealing a 4-time MVP who still plays at a really high level, I can't see it going for less than a first rounder. I don't know, but maybe
I'm hoping for a 2 this year, and then a pick that is either going to be a 2 or a 3 next year that can elevate to a 2 or a 1 based on obviously if he plays. But I just, and they said that 13 would be involved. I don't see the Jets giving up 13, but if that's the sticking point, it's just there's obviously a large difference between 13 this year and what you're hoping is 28 next year. So I'm hoping the Jets are fighting for that 13th pick, because obviously you want to surround him with that tackle. You know, obviously they want to tackle a receiver, linebacker, safety, wherever the hell it's going to be at 13, where most of us think offensive lineman there. But you want that to surround him, obviously now. So I'm hoping they're going to fight to give the 1 next year based on if he plays or not. Because the thing about it is his contract's massive too. It's not it's the cap that's the next 2 years are very, very manageable. But the dead cap in 2025, 2026 is a lot. It's a lot of money. I think again, don't quote me on that contract stuff. I suck with it. But I think it's like $30 million-ish a year for both of those years. And he's not going to be on the team. So yeah, the cap hits are great this year, but it's going to hurt us a lot in the future. So this move is really all in, where Carr is a little bit more sustainable, and people are saying you can't win with them again. We've seen some quarterbacks in the recent past at least make the dance or get pretty close or be like contenders for the Super Bowl with, Nick Foles. Nick Foles won one. Jimmy Garoppolo got there. Matt Stafford's very good, but he's not elite Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes type. And then there's stats out there for Carr. And again, I'm not going to get into it too much. We should talk about it already. But since he's been in the league, he's had the worst defense overall in the NFL. The worst. Not 31, not 30, not 29, the worst defensive cumulatively in the NFL. And there's a stat that came out here the other day, which was the Raiders are 40. I hope this is real. I'm taking it as Israel right now. But the Raiders are 45-27 with Carr when they allow less than 26 points. 45-27 when they allow less than 26 points. That is a bad defensive game if you allow more than 26 points. Like, how many games did the Jets allow more than 26 points, this year? And you're talking about, even what the Chiefs Bengals game was, that 23-20. I think the end of that game was. So I'm not saying that necessarily correlates, but we're talking about a guy who has almost double the amount of wins than losses when his defense just doesn't suck ass. Not, they locked him down to 13 points, 26 points. He's 45-27, Kyle. And again, this is like, I get that quarterbacks have the most to do with wins, but we know this just from the season. Zach Wilson 5-2. Quarterbacks are not necessarily wins or losses or wins are not necessarily a quarterback stat. If you have a situation like Carr does with a bad defense, with bad coaches, with obviously a influx of just dysfunctional, organizational decisions that they've had in recent years with some of their draft picks and cutting guys and Leatherwood and all these guys getting arrested and killing people and all this shit. And for the most part, minus a year or two, the offensive line for him has been absolutely booty too. So you're talking about a bad organizational structure with bad coaches, with bad offensive lines, with the worst defense since he's been in the league. I don't know why he doesn't win a lot of playoff games. Kyle, do you have any idea? I'm not sure. Why is he not going to the Super Bowl? I don't know.
Well, football's a team game, Joe. That is the key phrase right there. I don't know. When I was driving to work today, I assume like most diehard Jets fans, this has been on our mind a lot. And I was kind of thinking about this whole thing, Rodgers, Carr, Rodgers, blah, 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 blah. And when I was thinking of Carr, the name Matt Ryan came to mind. And I thought of that 2016 season, the almost first time that the Atlanta Falcons won the Super Bowl. And Matt Ryan had a historic season that year. And at the time, what's Matt Ryan? 37, 38 right now, something like that?
36, 37, I would say.
Okay, so you talk 6 years ago, right? That's when that Super Bowl was. So Matt Ryan is around a similar age to what Derek Carr is right now. Now, Matt Ryan that year had like 9-something yards per attempt. I mean, he had Kyle Shanahan as his offensive coordinator. He had prime Julio Jones, right? They had, what's Devontae? What's his name? Devontae. I'm trying to think of the running backs, but they had a good offensive line. You know, it was just mostly you put the offensive success.
You're thinking, Freeman.
Freeman, there you go.
Freeman.
That name came to mind, but I was like, am I wrong about that?
Yeah.
But anyway, that offense was really, really, really good. But I mean, like, did Matt Ryan ever make like any of these like really, really, really special throws, or did we ever see really, really super athleticism? He was a quarterback who always kind of worked in structure. He was reliable. He was very smart. You know, he has very good pocket presence. But you know, I mean, like if we're talking just like straight talent, Carr is more talented than Matt Ryan. Now you could argue that Matt Ryan has, better, and they called him Matty Ice for a reason, ice water running through his veins. I'm not going to say in terms of intangibles that Carr is better than Matt Ryan, because I don't think he is. But in terms of straight athleticism, but anyway, the point of me saying that is with good coaching, which I'm not saying that the Jets have that, and with a good organization around you, elite level talent like Julio Jones, right? They had pretty good offensive line that year. I know Alex Mack, the center, he was having like a historically good season and things like that. It obviously elevates players, and as long as you have like a baseline level of quarterback play. So I don't know. That kind of comparison just came to mind. But while you were talking, and we were talking about the 13th overall pick and whether or not that should be dealt, if you deal the 13th overall pick, I think that shows that Joe Douglas is somewhat desperate. And I don't think that Joe Douglas has really been desperate as his time with the Jets. I mean, the only kind of like desperation move that I kind of see is like, trying to get Khalil out of retirement. Like, Khalil, we're really struggling on the offensive line. And
I would be desperate if Wesley Johnson was my start, or it was Jonathan Harrison that year was going to be my starting center. So I got desperation.
Yeah. So like, that was kind of the only like quote unquote desperation move that I can really think of. And Joe Douglas is like, hey, listen, I'll sit with this. He's the guy who wins the trades. You're not going to bully him in a trade. Like if he's forced to give up the 13th overall pick, it kind of seems a little desperate. But I mean, as we've said so much over the past couple of weeks, the man needs to start winning. He's not locked up a second contract with the Jets, right? And it's much easier for a head coach to get another head coaching job. Frank Reich, we just saw one. But how many GMs get a second GM job after they've been fired? It's much less often, I would think. Do you think I'm right about that?
Yeah, I can not one name is coming to mind. Obviously, coaches are more in the forefront. You know who they are, more so than the GMs. Like GM's name kind of flies by on Twitter, and I forget about them in a second. But none are coming to mind where guys got fired and got a new GM spot.
So the point is like, hey, listen, if they do give up the 13th overall pick, it does, kind of reek of desperation a little bit. But maybe you do that for an all-time great. I don't know, but they really got to get one of these guys, man. And I don't know how long you can wait for Rodgers, but I just get the feeling based off everything I'm hearing and the Hackett connection that they're really kind of going all in for Rodgers. And I feel like the organization, just hear how Woody was talking, like the fact that Woody Johnson, you just took the second overall pick on Zach Wilson a couple of years ago, but you're being so public. Like usually like when a quarterback struggles, and I understand he struggled mightily, like he struggled so much more than other high premium picks. Like they are publicly saying, yeah, we're struggling at quarterback. Like to have your owner like publicly say that to the media, like so like explicitly saying they know what the problem is. I think that the organization thinks that they are, much closer than probably other people throughout the league do. I do think the Jets, overall have like a decently, solid roster. I mean, like the offensive line is still a big concern for me. But I think they really think Rodgers is the missing piece. But anyway, go ahead and say what you were saying.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that, we'll talk about Todd Downing in a little bit, but that has a connection to Derek Carr as well and Tannehill. But Todd Downing was Carr's QB coach in 15 and 16, and then was his OC in 17 as well. So you actually have multiple ties in this system to Derek Carr as well. So we'll see. I'm hoping Derek Carr takes a nice, relaxing kind of trip throughout a bunch of different cities. He goes to the Saints, he goes to the Panthers, he goes to the Bucks, he goes to the Jets, and really takes his time, because the risk is he makes his decision quickly, and we're sitting there with a thumbs up our ass waiting for Rodgers to get out of the dark. And again, like I don't really care about Rodgers going into the dark, and yeah, it's a little weird, whatever. But like I'm not gonna like kill the guy for that, like his character, because he wants to do a darkness retreat. It is what it is. If he's a good quarterback, he's a good quarterback. I couldn't give two shits less what he does in the dark. But yeah, and we'll talk about Todd Downing in a little bit. We'll talk about some other stuff. We'll get to the super chat really quick. Love the pod, guys. Kyle must be related to the actor Eddie Marsan. I don't know who that is.
I gotta look up who that is because I truly don't know who that celebrity is off the top of my head. Let me look.
I appreciate you, AP14. But while you're looking that up, Kyle, there was again, and there's a bunch of smoke screens and rumors and stupid bullshit out there right now that really we shouldn't even really look into. But apparently, did you see Eddie Marsan? Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, I'm looking at him right now. He's British. He's 5'4". I don't think I look that much like this guy.
Hold on.
Do I talk like him?
No, Kyle. I'll give you more credit than that. You don't look like Eddie Marsan. AP14 with a fucking low blow there. But nonetheless, people are talking about like some quarterback options that aren't like frequently talked about with the Jets, and there might be a surprise option. Surprise option comes to mind. I think two guys that we've discussed in the past come to mind when people say that because we've already beaten this dead horse 1,000 times. But Dak Prescott, Ryan Tannehill. To me, if they were to miss out on all these top guys, if they were to, and again, I get the contract stuff, I get it's hard, etc. There might have to be some restructuring, whatever it may be. Dak and then Tannehill and then Jimmy, like that's where I fall. I don't know how much I have to give up for Dak or anything like that. I'm not sure if you can even make the contract work. I probably think that it's a very, very low chance he's traded anyway, maybe a 2% chance, but you never know. Past that, it's most likely Tannehill or Garoppolo. To me, just because of health reasons, I'd probably prefer Tannehill. But then you can also argue, okay, he's older. He's 35, right? About to be 36. And he missed a couple of games this year where Jimmy G is younger. But obviously we're literally having his run game coordinator and his pass game and his OC come to the Jets for Tannehill. So it's a pretty smooth transition. It's just how much is it going to take to get here. And I know his contract, not off the top of my head, but it's not great in terms of trading for it. So do you see Dak as a potential option? Do you see Tannehill? And then I want to get into one more quarterback, and then we're going to fly through the chat, and then we'll get into Todd Downing and some other stuff. I watched some prospects too, Kyle. I don't know if you.
I did see you put some clips up of some offensive linemen, but
I did Paris Johnson and Peter Skronsky so far. I'm going to work on some other guys too. It's just like I'm starting to watch those guys, and then Downing gets hired, so I want to watch his offense a little bit, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, if the Jets trade this 13th overall draft pick, I did 5 reviews that are prepped, and then they don't even have that pick. I'm like, so I might just wait a little bit before really putting them out. But yeah, watch a couple of those guys. But Dak, is it realistic? What's the percentage chance? I think it's like a 2% chance to be completely honest. And then is Tannehill your next guy if they are to strike out on Rodgers and Carr? Then I want to follow up with one more quarterback question, and then we'll get into the chat.
Yeah, I feel like, is it realistic in the sense that there's a possibility? I mean, I guess sure there's a possibility. I mean, like, Jerry Jones seems to be a relatively impatient guy. Shoot, they haven't made the conference championship game since 90 something, so it's been quite a while. But I mean, like the Cowboys have always pretty much had steady quarterback play. I don't see them wanting to move away from that. I feel like the only way you can move away from that is if you're really sold that you have a replacement. I don't see how you could be sold on Cooper Rush other than the fact that, he filled in admirably. But again, though, they have a solid team around him. So I don't really think that that's very realistic. I do like Dak, more than Jimmy G. Yeah, and I definitely like Tannehill more than Jimmy G. As I've said before. Mm-hmm. I don't know, man. Jimmy G just doesn't.
It's depressing. I'm going to get into another one, though, because a lot of people talk about Lamar Jackson and what it would cost to get Lamar Jackson, and I'm not sure exactly what you feel, but what was Russ, like 3 first-round draft picks, another mid-round pick or 2, Shelby Harris, Noah Fant. So let's just break even and just say Lamar Jackson cost 4 first-round draft picks. Okay. I don't know if you could trade 4 into the future, but nonetheless, something right around that, Kyle. The thing with that I talked about a lot last week was, if they're trying to move Lamar Jackson into more of a pro-style offense, because people said, okay, yeah, he played more of a pro-style offense or a pro-style offense at Louisville, so he could do that. My problem with that is if you're trading for Lamar Jackson, you're trading 4 first-round draft picks, you're paying him $48 million a year, $49 million a year, $50 million a year guaranteed with some injury risk. You're taking a guy who, again, you're trading for to be that MVP level Lamar Jackson. What does that include, Kyle? A lot of QB counters, QB powers, QB sweeps, running the ball a lot, and then you're trying to fit him into a pro-style offense, which, yeah, maybe he'll fit better than some people think he would, but is he worth $50 million a year? and multiple and 4 first-round draft picks, whatever it's going to be, to acquire Lamar Jackson playing more of a pro-style offense and not taking advantage of what makes him a truly special quarterback. What is his legs? So I was kind of saying it last week, like you might be trading all that stuff thinking you're getting that $50 million a year Lamar Jackson, like saying he's worth that if you think that, which I don't necessarily agree with. And you're going to be paying him to be a passing quarterback, and he's maybe worth maybe $30 million, $35 million as a pass first quarterback who can run. If you're trading all those assets for Lamar Jackson, you want to take advantage of what he's really good at, which is, obviously the counters, the powers, the running the ball, etc. So to me, I just don't really see any situation where it's feasible. Does he fit the team? Does he fit the offense we're about to be running? So I think it's a little bit square peg, round hole type deal with Lamar Jackson, and you're trading a shitload for him. And there's a ton of just inherent risk with getting Lamar Jackson here from the offense and from the recent injuries, which I know the injuries were from the pocket. I get that. But he still scrambles enough where it's still, more of a concern than other quarterbacks. So Lamar Jackson, I just don't see it as realistic in many different scenarios.
If Eric DaCosta calls me and I'm Joe Douglas, hey, Joe, we're offering you, we love Lamar. Lamar's great. We drafted him ourselves. We hate to see him go, but, we're willing to deal him, but it's got to be for appropriate price, and what's appropriate is 4 first-round picks. Are you down, Joe Douglas? Joe Douglas, respectful guy. Eric, thank you. Have a good day. Click. I'm not even considering that. No way. Four first-round picks. You got to be kidding.
And let's just say everything is perfect, Kyle. And it's hard to necessarily quantify exactly how much running versus passing he would do in a more pass-first system for him, but let's just say Lamar Jackson is a quarterback who, drops back, passes the ball a lot more than he runs the ball. He only scrambles maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 times a game, but he's not really doing those QB powers counters unless it's like a big third down situation. How much is he really worth at the price where he's not running the ball like he was with the Ravens? Like if he was what he was coming out of, Louisville, he was a 32nd overall pick in that draft. He wasn't Lamar Jackson, what he is now. So to me, it's like, obviously it's hard to quantify, but maybe $30-35 million a year type of player. I think he would still be a top half of the league quarterback, but you take away his legs, he's not nearly the same weapon. He's not worth $50 million a year. There's no way. So
when we were watching the Super Bowl, I said to my dad, and then I repeated this to a couple other people who, because people talk about this. Everyone watches the Super Bowl, right? There's so many average run-of-the-mill fans who don't watch the conference championship games 2 weeks before, but then, everybody watches the Super Bowl and everybody has an opinion about it. Okay. One of my pet peeves, but anyway, so I was saying to my dad while we were watching the game, I said, Dad, if you're telling me that I can have a quarterback drop back and he's got to make 10 consecutive throws from within the pocket, and you're telling me I got the option to take Jalen Hurts or Derek Carr, who am I taking? I'm taking Derek Carr. And my dad's like, oh, that makes sense. Dude, watch. Listen, I'm not trying to shit on Jalen Hurts. He's a fine player. How many of his successful plays in that game came from him? Okay, what's it? Frank Clark. He has that one of Jalen Hurts' best plays in that game was when Frank Clark, had a rush. He rushed, too much inside, didn't have enough of a contained rush. Jalen Hurts booted the opposite way, made a crossbody throw. I believe it was to Zach Pascal for a first down. That was one of his better plays in that game, right? Some people might point to, his deep pass to A.J. Brown for a touchdown. Honestly, I feel like the defensive backs didn't play that great. And then he tried that same throw later in the game. Thornhill dropped an interception. Hurts is a fine player, but a lot of his really good plays in that game came with his legs. So if we're talking straight passer, you can't tell me that Carr's not better than Hurts. And Hurts, he missed some games last year. He missed some games this year, right? When you run, and especially like a guy like Hurts, he takes some hits straight on, but we're not talking about Hurts right now. We're talking about Lamar, and you could very well say that, Lamar is not a guy who squats 600 pounds like Jalen Hurts does. So you're not going to run as much powers and stuff. But the point is that he still is going to take hits when you run. Like part of the intrigue with Lamar is, okay, when you run the ball, there's an extra gap to defend. Okay, well, if you're going to run the ball with your quarterback, or at least have the quarterback, to have the option to pull the ball, even if he pitches it, you can still hit him. All right.
You get rocked, yeah.
So you're putting your quarterback at risk. If you're telling me I got to take away his legs, I'm sorry. I don't think in terms of, we'd have to really kind of work through a list, but if you're telling me just as a pocket passer, is he even in the top half of the league? in terms of a pocket.
Yeah,
passer.
I was gonna say like average, and I think that's pretty fair. But
That's pretty
realistically,
generous.
yeah,
It's really pretty generous. So you're telling me I got to give up all that, pay him all that, and then change the way that he plays? It doesn't make any sense at all. And that's why I say, if I'm Joe Douglas, I say thank you, click, hang up the phone.
yeah, and even and in an offense that like I don't remember. I watched Becton a couple of years ago, but I don't remember exactly what their offense was. Like it could be pro style, but is it West Coast? Is it West Coast type pro style offense? Because so I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it either. I'm staying pretty far away from Lamar Jackson at this point. But let's go through the chat here. Princeton, who was in here before. Keep Mike White. He's just as good as half the options we would sign for the fraction of a cost. I don't think Kyle or I will agree with that because he has much to prove he could be even Tannehill or Jimmy G or any one of these guys. And the problem with him is
the problem with
3
Tannehill
injuries in 7-8 games.
Yeah, the thing is with Tannehill or Jimmy G, we say, injuries is part of the reason you're very hesitant. Dude, Mike White's played less games than them and been banged up, so.
Yeah, no, I can't do that. I like Mike White, Jordan Victor. I like Mike White, but doubt Joe D and Salah would gamble on someone who has there's no way. If we walk into next year with Mike White being the starting quarterback, we have serious. I don't know how we're gonna get through the offseason, Kyle. I'm not gonna be able to handle.
We were saying if Mike White finished out the season, which he didn't, and made it to the playoffs and actually got 2 playoff games and played fine with them, we would still say that we would be concerned for how good he could be long term. But none of that even happened. So, how could you be sold at this point? It would be stupid, frankly.
Good to see you, Kyle and Joe. Good to see you, Sneakers the Boots. Saw us anyway, wanted him at 4. It's because you listen to the show often, Simon. We were big, and you could have been even before us, but we were on the Sauce train very, very early. Michael says, good to see you guys. Most informative show on YouTube. Hope you guys have been doing well. Very well.
Thanks, Michael.
At least for myself. I know Kyle's been doing pretty well.
Dude, we're going on a class hiking trip tomorrow, and it's supposed to rain, so that should be a ton of fun.
Wait a second. Did the camera scratch disappear? No, it's hidden in my fan, so you can't see it. But I'm getting a new computer. There's a guy who commented last week, like, dude, just
by the way, did you perfectly align your computer so that it would show up there?
Yeah, right in the fan. But listen. Yeah, so it kind of. But the thing about it is, like, just get a new camera. Cameras aren't $10. If I get a new camera, it's a new computer, and the laptop I'm looking at, it's like a MacBook, blah 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 blah. It's like $2,500. So it's not just get a new camera, So yeah, I'll get a new camera.
Aren't there external cameras that you could do for your computer? I don't really know. I never really looked into that, but I can't imagine it'd be cheap to get a good one.
That and why not just do it all at the same point? Because now, Kyle, you know how much files I have on my computer. And I've had to delete a lot, and there's still sometimes it's running really slow. It's just been 10 years of storing thousands and thousands of plays. My computer needs to go on retirement for the rest of its life. What's up, Yoshi? The better not to think about Tannehill. Again, I think he's really option 3 or 4. If the Jets strike out on Carr or Rodgers, and if they strike out on Rodgers and they miss out on Carr, I'm gonna have hell to raise here because I just the process to me is bad. In that situation. Now, if they hit on Rodgers, awesome, but I'm not sure. Regardless, I'm gonna like the process. Talking about the Super Bowl, can we discuss how there's only been 4 non-elite quarterbacks to win the Super Bowl since Super Bowl 27? Dilfer, Brad Johnson, Flacco, Foles. Can argue Flacco's actually elite that whole season and game. I'm not gonna say he's elite that
Eli Manning was elite.
Yeah, Eli Manning.
He won too. Was Peyton Manning elite? Was Peyton Manning elite the year they won the Super Bowl in 2015?
Is Stafford elite? I don't think Stafford is elite. And even with that being said, if you're pulling up those names, I'm okay. Jimmy Garoppolo's gotten there, and I think Carr is much better than him. There's been quarterbacks who Tannehill's made it to multiple divisional games, right? At this point.
He made it to the conference championship.
And people talk about, you can't keep up with this quarterback, whatever. Aaron Rodgers against the Niners last year put up what, 10 points? Joe Burrow put up 20 points versus the Chiefs. It's not like these games are, again, like I said multiple times, 51-48. It's a team game. So if I think Derek Carr can lead you to 2 touchdowns in a game and a couple of field goals, and you might be able to win if your defense is that good because you don't have to give up assets necessarily to get him, and you could spend some of the draft picks on defense wherever it may be. But nonetheless, I think he's good enough to get there. But the thing is, with the thing said, Spolsey, and I get the Rodgers thing, is Rodgers still truly elite at this point? I think the Jets fans who are hopeful are going to say, yeah, he's going to be great. But what's to say we don't come out on the other end where, oh, yeah, last year, I know we were talking about the broken hand and the receivers and all this stuff, but what happens if he starts to be the 10th, 11th, 12th best quarterback next year, and we're not aiding, or we're not more like focusing on the positive side where he's the 5th or 6th best quarterback. Like, I think sometimes because of Brady and what he's done in recent years, some of our views of how long quarterbacks can go could be skewed a little bit. Like, what's to say that there's not a drop off coming for Rodgers? And last year, statistically, there was, and I get there's a lot more to that, but still, we're being uber positive about what he still is. And Burrow, Herbert, none of these guys are just falling into our lap. So I think with a guy in Carr, who I think we put let's just say the 12th best quarterback in the league right now, Kyle, based on our opinion, right around there, I think you could at least get to the dance to that point. Again, if we come up short in conference championship game, I'm sure all of us are going to be pretty happy. But to just put out, oh, he doesn't win playoff games, and then people bring up stats of 45 and 27 when the defense allows 26 or more or less points. He had the worst defense statistically in the NFL since he's been a quarterback. He's going to be aided by the Jets defense, this year. And how many comeback victories did the Raiders allow this year? 4, 5, 6, whatever it was, like some crazy amount when they're up by 2 touchdowns.
It was a lot.
So, like, yeah, he's not Aaron Rodgers. He never will be. But I think if you have a team around him, you can at least get into championship contender windows. So I think that you need an elite quarterback thing skewed a little bit. Yeah, I would love Joe Burrow too, but it's just, unfortunately, it's not going to happen. We're hoping Zach Wilson can be that guy, but we've had to obviously turn to plan B. So
yeah, I don't really have anything to add there.
Yeah. Like, after telling me Rodgers at 31 years old, okay, trade all your first round draft picks. Cool.
They would never give him up.
He's 39. He's obviously a little bit off kilter. Is he going to retire after a year? You have no idea. It's just there's a lot of risk with him. He's not a lockdown top 5 quarterback for the next 2 years. You don't know that. That's the positive side of it. But who's to say he doesn't fall off? And me personally, I'll be realistic. I think that he will still be that top 5, 6, 7 quarterback in the league for the next 2 years because I think he's smart. I just can't see him falling off that quickly. I still do think he's pretty elite with his arm. But you never know. He could fall off, and then we're really screwed. So it's I don't know. It's not so black or white to me with that situation. Foles didn't come in until week 13, and then he took them to the playoffs. The most important part. Gents, how goes it? What's up, Better Call Saul? John Nolte says he watched Klicko when I was growing up. He should have never had to wait so long for the Hall of Fame. He's insanely good. Yeah, I don't know what the real bias against him getting in was. I know before one of his dominant years is they didn't track sacks, so maybe that was part of it.
Supposedly he had 20 something that year.
Yeah, but yeah, just based on the fact he was in a Pro Bowl in 3 different positions, which the Pro Bowl is way overrated at this point. He had Taylor Huntley in the Pro Bowl, this year. I'm not sure how it worked in 1980 or whenever Klecko's heyday was, but was it the 80s, right? I believe so. I believe it was the 80s. I could be wrong. But yeah. Klecko, Revis, Hall of Fame bound by, which, by the way, Kyle, another kind of trickle off of that is the Jets are most likely going to be in the Hall of Fame games. We have another game to evaluate, guys 53 through 80 something on the roster.
Yeah, but it's also another game for guys to get hurt.
Yep, and that's the Jets fans' way of looking at things because that 2 guys are going to tear their ACLs in that game or something. Which, by the way, the field turf in Arizona, I know a lot of people talk about that, but that was ridiculous how many players were falling and stuff. You think you're a $1 billion organization plus, and you're making millions and millions of dollars on each broadcast. Doesn't matter if it's the freaking, I don't know, the 2 shittiest teams in the league. You're still making millions of dollars, and we can't figure out fucking grass, Kyle, or turf. This is really what's happening.
It is a grass stadium, yeah.
It was embarrassing. Revis injury sadly cut the career shorter. Yeah, everybody battles injuries. To me, he at the end of it, he really lost the want to. I don't think he had.
There was just times dude, just watch 2016 season when they played the Browns and old Ohio State quarterback, I'm forgetting his name, who turned wide receiver and even had a very brief stint with the Jets. He tore Revis up that game, and it's not even just that Revis couldn't cover him. Revis looked
Braxton
totally
Jones. No.
He was a tall, skinny quarterback.
Terrell Pryor.
There you go.
Pryor. Okay.
Revis didn't even look interested and wanted to make a tackle after the guy caught the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Brady, Revis was checked out. He was.
What's up, boys? Stay positive, you bunch of sickos. And my Jets fan, we try to. It's just that we're more used to the negative, so we have to at least discuss it. I think Kyle, what is the percent chance right now you'd put on the Jets landing one of Carr or Rodgers? Them
All
being
right,
the
percent
2023 starting quarterback.
chance that they land. I would say, being that they seem to have a bright future,
Mhm.
with Brees and Garrett Wilson, and people seem to like Saleh. I think it's, I'll put it at like 55-60% that they land one of the two.
Yeah, I'm
But that's
about
still
there
too
with you.
low for my liking, though, because that still means that you have about a 40% chance that you don't.
And if now let's change that, and because I think that's because you have said, or you just said, obviously a couple of minutes ago, that you think that they're going after Rodgers kind of balls deep and they're not really going after Carr. Now, would that percentage jump up a large chunk if I was to say, okay, well, they're going to go all in for Carr right now? Because really the competition that we've been seeing is the Bucks. Okay, the Bucks, the Panthers, the Saints, who have no cap room at all. I don't know how they're going to make that work. So if they were to go all in for Carr, do you think and people will comment this on the videos and stuff, like we talk about Carr just to assume like it's we're not assuming he's going to come here. We're just talking about it as an option. He could deny the Jets right now. He could have told them they could have called him and said, no, I'm not interested in playing New York. We don't know. We're just talking about him if he were willing to come to the Jets. But nonetheless, Kyle, what do you think would the percent raise a lot if they're going balls in or balls deep for Carr right now? Or
Yeah, I mean, well, like if they're all in on Carr and not in on Rodgers, I don't know that I would increase my percentage because it's still just one guy. I mean, Carr, for whatever reason, he could like a city better elsewhere for whatever reason, personal reasons. You don't know. I mean, I guess the thing with Carr is, so we're talking about cap room and stuff. I mean, like the Panthers seem to be a roster that's not as equipped to win right now as the Jets. Now, if we're talking the Saints have been one of these teams historically over like the past decade with Mickey Loomis at GM that has like always been right up against the cap. Now, the thing is okay, Carr could say, well, if they really wanted Carr the Saints, they could probably find a way to make it work out. But then you're strapped in other areas so that if you're Carr, like, okay, well, they're paying me all this money. They're a team that's kind of still in rebuild. What money are they going to have to spend elsewhere? So I don't know if you're Derek Carr,
all their good players, dude.
And if you're Derek Carr, you spent 9 years in the league, you haven't done much winning. You have to figure he probably wants to win at this point. I know I quoted this press conference 2 weeks ago when we live streamed, but I remember at the beginning of one season, it wasn't the beginning of last season, it might have been 2 seasons ago. He had a freshly shaved head and he's like, I'm tired of being disrespected. It's like, okay, if you're tired of being disrespected, start winning some games. And part of that's out of his control, but now it's totally in his control. You get to choose where you want to go. So, obviously money is top priority. It has to be. You want to provide for your family and future generations. But, do you also want to do the Tom Brady thing and maybe take a little less, so you have some money to spend elsewhere? I think I would have to think that Derek Carr might want a little bit of that. So maybe that, even though he visited the Saints, that to me is one reason why I still say, okay, well, I wouldn't really pencil him in with the Saints, so to speak.
No, it's the only team who agreed to a trade with the Raiders. So you just might want to get a head start, and see their facilities and whatever. I wouldn't lock them to the Saints just because of a visit. It's not like the Jets, the Titans, all these other teams agreed for the trade. He just visited the Saints and no other team, is the only team you could potentially visit. And you visit them. Okay, cool. It's just when you look at the rosters and kind of where they stand right now, whether it be the Saints or the Panthers or the Falcons or whoever we're going to talk about landing Carr, I think the Jets are legitimately his best opportunity. Maybe you can argue one or two teams over him. Like, okay, the Panthers new coach, they got some solid pieces on defense with Chin and Burns and DJ Moore and all this stuff. Okay, I get it. But still, I think the Jets are his best shot. So we'll see what happens. John, appreciate the $5 super chat. I want Rodgers, but I can see Carr getting hot for the playoffs and making a couple of runs like Eli. Regular season stats don't win Super Bowls. Yeah, you never know when a guy's going to get hot. Like, was Flacco
who would you say?
Who Ravens fans were thinking they're going to drag him to the Super Bowl that year? Eli too. They were 9-7, 10-6. He wasn't playing well. He got hot. Nick Foles was a backup, and then he got hot, brought them to the Super Bowl. Again,
as hot as Eli got,
Jimmy G getting to the Super Bowl. So it's possible the guy who's solid.
If we're talking straight talent, and I can't really comment as much on early career Eli. I mean, I know he was drafted in 2004, and obviously he was a highly touted draft pick, first overall, and everyone was like pretty much like, oh, he's definitely going to be the first overall pick, whatever year he comes out. But if we're talking like as a pure thrower of the football, I would say that Carr is more talented than Eli, at least for like the majority of the career that I watched. You know, like Eli even never really impressed me. Like I always thought Eli was kind of like mid, and you could argue that Carr is very much mid too, but I never thought Carr was mid because of a lack of talent.
No,
I just kind of thought
his
Carr
arm's
was
talented.
mid. Yeah. Carr is
Yeah.
definitely a very talented thrower of the football.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And he even moves a little bit better than I thought he did prior to.
Yeah,
to
Eli's
watching
definitely
him.
like a statue. Don't let the whole breaking away from a Richard Seymour sack in Super Bowl 2007 against the undefeated Patriots make you think that Eli had elusivity.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to let my dog into this room in a second because I think my wife just left, so he's gonna start scratching the door and barking. So I'm gonna have to let him in a second. So okay. I'm gonna bring up another chat and I'm gonna let him in real quick. X marks Kyle. I can hear you when I walk away. Am I an idiot for thinking healthy Mike White is as good as a 35-year-old Tannehill? You want to hit that while I grab him real quick?
Well, idiots may be a bit of a harsh word, so I'll use the euphemism there. No, you're not an idiot, but you are misguided. Listen, Ryan Tannehill. It's not the direction you want to go in because he is 35 and the injuries are starting to come on him. But Ryan Tannehill is a pretty talented player, and he's put together quite. He has a good resume. Mike White doesn't. There's a reason why Mike White was a 5th-round draft pick. Ryan Tannehill was the 8th overall draft pick. All right, so talent alone, but you've also but Ryan Tannehill's been running he's been running and starting NFL teams for years now, right? Like Ryan Tannehill walked in as the starter. 8th overall draft pick. Did he have a great rookie year? No, but he was the unquestioned starter year in, year out. Nobody ever thought about benching him. Like we talked about benching Zach Wilson to give him a reset, let him get his mind right. There was never any question. Ryan Tannehill then went to Tennessee after he had a shoulder injury and he had Adam Gase as his coach. That's why they ran him out of Miami. Not because he couldn't play. It was kind of like a shitty set of circumstances why he went out of Miami. Goes to Tennessee. Tennessee liked him enough to trade a 4th-round draft pick for him. And then he ends up taking the starting job away from Tennessee's 2nd overall draft pick and Marcus Mariota. Tannehill, I like him more than Joe does. He's a fine player. He has a resume of work. Mike White doesn't. And the thing is, you can criticize Tannehill for his injuries. It's a legit concern. I would not argue with you there. But Mike White has that same concern. So, no, they're not. I would not say that it's better to go the Mike White direction.
I feel like a lot of my Tannehill hate comes from the 2 years, which you look up Ryan Tannehill's stats, which are no stats and everything, but his first 2 years and he was more of like an athletic game manager, obviously because of the running game. But, 2019, 2,700 yards, 22 touchdowns, 6 picks. 2020, 33 touchdowns, 7 picks. Like he's at least proven. I think he's proven he's at least average, So, and obviously diminishing and injuries and stuff, we can question that, maybe put him a little bit below that, but he's proven a lot more than Mike White at this point. So you're telling me one or the other for next year. I definitely am taking Tannehill. And again, I think some of my hate comes from not necessarily arguing that he's average or slightly above average in his prime. I think it comes from more like those couple of years when he just went to Tennessee. People were talking about him like top 5-ish range.
That's because
6,
PFF
7,
loved him. Like he was getting getting 90 PFF grades for the season. It's like, okay, like I like Tannehill. Don't get me wrong, but don't tell me he's a top 5 quarterback in the league. I never fell for that.
Yeah, sneakers and boots. We're definitely getting Carr, Rodgers or Carr. JD knows his job is on the line. Plus, he was essentially all in for the big. No, and I agree that they'll be all in for one of these quarterbacks. My problem is the timeline. Again, if you wait on Carr, he goes to the Panthers, and then it's Rodgers or bust. How can you say 100% that we're getting Rodgers if Carr is gone? Who's to say he doesn't retire? Who's to say Packers don't keep him? Like you have no idea what he's going to do. So I can't say I'm guaranteeing you're going to get one of them because if you wait, I think if you go for Carr very hard, then there's a better chance we land one of them. But I can also see Rodgers. Like he's a little bit weird. Like the Jets roll out the red carpet for Carr. They don't land him. Rodgers like, I don't really want to go there anymore. Like they struck out on Carr. I don't want to be the second guy. Like I could see him thinking like that. Maybe not saying it, but I don't know. I'd rather type a few assets with the third choice. I don't know if that give Carr the money. Let's see. Steven, like the Devils are playing tonight, right? 7:00, I think. Steven, have you watched much all 22 on Carr? Yeah, I watched his first 4 games of 2020. So I have a good feel for him, and I've watched him obviously just in the past on all 22 when the Jets have played him, and then just in general as a football fan. And regardless of getting into the exact strengths, the exact weaknesses of Carr, I felt for most of my football watching life while Carr was around that he was in that 10 to 15 range. And by watching his first couple of games of 2020, and I'll watch even more if he signed, obviously I'll have an annoyingly amount of hours of film reviews out there if they do get him. I still think he's in that, not even 15 range. I think he's more like in that 11 to 13, 14 range, shorten the window a little bit. But I think he's a solid quarterback who you can win with. Like, I legitimately enjoyed watching him play in those games. His arm is real. His athletic talent in terms of his legs is underrated. His ability to maneuver the pocket, like get out of the pocket's good. Good arm strength. Now there's some baffling decisions. There's sometimes he chucks up deep balls into double coverage I don't necessarily love, or some brain farts, and that's the reason he's not necessarily top 5, top 10. But I think he's solid. Like, I was not disappointed watching his film. I have to watch a lot more. But the stats thing, he didn't win, is just it's stupid, because you can bring up stats about his defense, etc., his organization around him, the talent around him. People talk about, his talent this year. Waller missed a ton of games. Renfrow missed a ton of games. Yeah, he had Devontae Adams and a shit offensive line. Okay, it happens. And people are taking the side of, he didn't. Josh McDaniels benched him. Josh McDaniels doesn't have the best track record of being a competent head coach in the NFL. So I'm not putting all my eggs in Josh McDaniels' basket in terms of competency. So yeah, they benched him because they didn't want to give him the contract. But people act when they talk about Carr like they benched him because Stidham was better. That's not why they benched him. They benched him because they wanted to not guarantee his contract for injury. So it wasn't, Stidham's better than Carr. They just they knew they wanted to get rid of him because him and the head coach weren't seeing eye to eye. That shit happens. So yeah, it's, I'm on the Carr train. That's my option. That's my option one, just because of the timeline. Again, I can completely understand Rodgers. It's just more of a risk. So his film was impressive. I think he kind of fell right into where I thought he would be.
Yeah. Like I said before, 2 weeks ago, my head is on the Carr train and my heart is on the Rodgers train. Like, there's a part of me that, sometimes a team you don't expect to win the Super Bowl wins it. I don't think the Jets roster is on level with some others. Like that Eagles roster, man. That Eagles roster was so stacked that, they are going to be able to kind of reload, right? They're not going to have to rebuild, even though they're going to give Jalen Hurts a contract, but they still got the 10th overall pick or whatever from that trade. And see, that's the thing. Like, if you can hit a quarterback in the second round, which they did with Jalen Hurts, you don't have to spend all those assets and stuff. You can have a stacked roster while your quarterback's on a rookie contract. So there's a reason that roster was, situated the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a part of me that just has always loved Aaron Rodgers' game so much. And if the Jets could go on to win the Super Bowl, like, dude, yeah, man, you guys, all those years he was with the Packers, he only won one ring. He comes to the Jets at the tail end of his career and wins a ring. Like, if you're a Buccaneers fan right now, like, yeah, Brady won 6 rings with the Pats, but he won 1 with the Bucs. Like, like, even though he only spent 3 years with you guys, the Buccaneers, like, he's already top quarterback on your list all time. Like, so like, there's a part of me that just likes Rodgers so much that if he came here and did that with the Jets, I don't know. And he's a better player right now. So
yeah,
listen, the Carr haters out there, you're really wrong. He's not a bad player.
Yeah, I've seen the idiocy that is Raiders Twitter this week, like people retweeting them burning Carr jerseys because he doesn't want to give the team he's going to go to. Hey, get rid of the second round pick that could be your wide receiver for me because you want to trade that pick to the team who benched me when I can just wait a week and go visit multiple teams and even drive up the bidding price for me maybe a little bit. Like so Raiders fans are not fans to rely on. I figured out this week. Trade our second and Corey Davis for A-Rod. Trade this 13. Blah blah blah. They're going to need more than a second. Corey Davis. Corey Davis is not a highly sought after. It's not like he would gain a second or third round pick if you just try to trade him anyway. He'd get maybe a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, maybe if teams would even be willing to do that. So you're talking like a second, a fifth for Rodgers. They're going to need a lot more than that. Sneakers to boots. If we get Rodgers, Zach has to be the QB2. He has to be active in practices and meetings if JD plans to trade him.
I don't want Zach as my quarterback too. I just got.
I think the same thing. Like if we're getting Rodgers, right, we are planning on making a Super Bowl run. Like that's what the Jets organization is thinking. They're going all in for Rodgers to make that Super Bowl run. And in 2025, 2026, we'll figure out the cap shit later. If you go into that season and you go to the playoffs and Aaron Rodgers gets dinged up for a drive or two or even a game, and Zach Wilson walks in the game, we're gonna have massive problems. I don't like. Zach is so bad at this point that I like. You're talking about guys out there. I like who's out. Who quarterback? Case I'd rather have Case Keenum come in for a couple of quarters than Zach Wilson at this point. So people talk about Mike White being a quarterback too. The problem with Mike White, he's probably going to demand what $7 to $10 million a year.
Brett Rippon outplayed Zach Wilson in Denver. If we're being honest.
Yeah. So I don't want Zach to be QB2. You have to get another guy. I'm not saying it has to be Mike White for $8 million, but the Case Keenums, I don't like who was the guy who retired from the Chase Daniel, Matt Moore's, like these type of quarterbacks. Obviously, Matt Moore's gone now, but I'm talking not dead, just retired. But you know what I'm talking about, like just a lower tier backup quarterback they need. I don't think Zach has proven he could even be a backup quarterback you're confident right now. If you're going for the Super Bowl, he now active versus not active, that's a conversation to have. But for a Super Bowl run, he is not the quarterback that I want backing up.
I think that there's still really this belief, and I was having a conversation with Anthony, one of my students who comes in our chats from time to time, who's a big Jets fan. And he really, really, really wants Aaron Rodgers for obvious reasons. But I think part of the reason he wants him is like, hey, listen, we still got Zach under contract for X amount of years. And I like Zach. I believe in his talent, yada, yada, yada. I want to see him succeed. And I think that there is still a decent portion of the Jets fan base that wants Rodgers because Zach Wilson grew up idolizing him and has his number, and they're at least somewhat close. I mean, like in the sense that they somewhat talk to each other and they're cordial. But I think there's some portion of this Jets fan base that thinks that Rodgers is going to come in here, mentor this kid, and this kid can see Rodgers on a daily basis and replicate him. And all of a sudden, Zach Wilson will become and reach his full potential, so to speak. And I think that is utterly asinine thinking. Like Zach Wilson has watched so much Aaron Rodgers tape throughout the years. And has tried to
seeing his practice habits at 39 years old is not going to change. Not going to change him. Now being in the film room, maybe a little bit. But even if it works out,
a little bit. But like,
even if Zach Wilson does bounce back, Rodgers is here for 2 years. Are you signing? Are you extending Zach Wilson's 5th-year option because of he watched Rodgers sometimes? We have faith in what we saw of him in practice. Like, so I don't see Zach being here pretty much regardless if Aaron Rodgers stays 2 years. I can't see it. But continue if you want to continue.
No, I have nothing else to add to that.
If Carr signs quick, Rodgers wants to stay in Green Bay, retire. Would you guys send 3+ first rounders for Lamar? We already talked about it. No, absolutely not.
I mean, we said 4 first rounders for Lamar. Absolutely not. But
it's
3 first rounders, I feel the same way.
It's going to be
Click.
3.
Thank you. Thank you for the offer. Have a good day. Bye.
Yeah. If Jimmy was healthy, he's the better quarterback. Can we keep him healthy? Better quarterback than, I don't know if you're talking about Mike White. But the thing with Jimmy is consistently injured, playing with one of the best coaches, with one of the best rosters around him, and he still flubs up. Like he's still just okay with Shanahan. So
Jimmy makes head scratching decisions. Jimmy, there's nothing that he does from an athletic standpoint, either throwing the football. Yeah, he's got a quick release, throwing the football, or making plays with his legs that impresses you. And at times he plays way too conservative. So much of Jimmy's production is just throwing to guys who are schemed open, who get good yak. Right? I'm sorry, but most of it is on Kyle Shanahan. Period.
If we don't get Rodgers, LJ, or Carr, and bring back Mike White and someone like Minshew, Matthew, I can almost I will guarantee they're not going to do this because they're not relying their jobs on Mike White, who's seen 7 games, got injured 3 of them. Tannehill or Jimmy G, I get that they're not necessarily like overly appealing, but let's be real here, Kyle, and let's just live in an alternate universe right now for a second. Aaron Rodgers style, whatever we're doing. If Tannehill was on the Jets the last 5 years, how much are we glowing him up about how good he's been in those years? We'd be ecstatic. Even if Jimmy G was here without Shanahan, we'd be talking about how good he was. So Tannehill's a lot better than anything we've seen in the last pretty much 10 years.
If Tannehill was a starter last year and he was healthy the whole year, I think the team definitely could have made the playoffs.
Yeah. So I've heard there are only 14 players with a first-round grade from who?
It seems like Rodgers. It's like that a lot of years.
Dude, every year is
it's still very early. It's still very early.
I've heard that on every single draft, and the next draft is the best for this position or that position. So that's always kind of the narrative. I don't buy it.
I've seen a lot of people say it's a loaded running back class, but what do I know?
I've heard that. Yeah, but we don't really, of course we don't really need one, and corners too, and we don't really need a corner. So after looking into the draft prospects, so I haven't really yet. I've watched like full blown tape on Skronsky and Paris Johnson, and I plan on watching Branch, the safety / nickel. I plan on watching Addison.
Is that the Alabama guy?
Yeah, Alabama guy. But a lot of his highlights, again, I just watched the highlights just to get a general feel for what he was. A lot of his highlights came from the slot. So like a slot / strong safety type guy. I didn't really see him free too much, but I can obviously watch and see something completely different because how it's obviously tell the whole story. Past that, Addison, the receiver from USC, and then I plan on watching what's the big tackle from Georgia? Is it Broderick Jones? I could be wrong on the name. I think it's Broderick Jones.
I think you're right.
But the thing with Broderick Jones is like I'm thinking about his physical makeup. I don't know if you've heard about another big, huge tackle the Jets drafted in 2020, but is Joe Douglas going to go from drafting Mekhi Becton to drafting another guy who's 6'8", 370? I don't know. I don't know. So I'm looking to those guys, but right now I'm leaning towards tackle. Between Paris Johnson and Scroncy, I get either person having either one higher. I think they fall in a pretty similar range to me. Scroncy's a little bit cleaner technically, not great in the run game. The arms are short. And Paris Johnson Jr. his physical makeup is a lot more appealing, but he's a lot of ways to go in terms of technique, from oversetting and how he punches. His run game, hands are wide and low, not wide and low like Neal, but they're wide and low. Doesn't really create a lot of movement. Doesn't attack the hip. He attacks the shoulder. So there's some things that he has to work on. But I understand either one. I don't really have it solidified who I like more right now because I haven't had to necessarily think like that. But I think either one of them are worth the 13th overall pick. But I'll get into the other guys as well because I think those are the realistic type of options for the Jets right now. Obviously, it's February 16th. So if we miss on Rodgers and Carr, I want a stopgap option Mike White, Bridgewater. Yeah, Solzy, again, we can all talk about this. There's no way Joe Douglas and Saleh are doing that. It's just not going to happen. They don't have time to do stopgap stuff. They have to prove Woody Johnson they can win. And I love a lot of what Joe Douglas has done. At the end of the day, it's been 4 years. He's been here for 4 years, and I know he had to turn over a lot of shit, Kyle. But at the end of the day, we were 7-4, 5-2, 6-3, whatever record you want to use, whatever one you feel is the best, and we missed the playoffs. We lost 6 games in a row. It did not end well last year. The last half of last year, the Jets looked like the same old Jets, at least on the field. So they got to prove something because it was embarrassing what they did to themselves last year. As the calendar hit December. So I'm concerned about winning anything with Carr. There's zero chance of winning a Super Bowl with any of these bums who are half of what Carr himself is. There's zero chance you're winning a Super Bowl with these other bums who are half of what Carr himself is.
I think he's saying that
the other guys, like Tannehill and all that stuff. Yeah. Browns destroy the QB market with the Watson trade. Yeah, and apparently, what did Deshaun Watson get? 5 years, like $240 all guaranteed. So Lamar wants to pass that. So you're talking about, again, I'm not great at math, but $49 million a year guaranteed for a quarterback who's been hurt the last couple of years. There's no way. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Swolsey says Lamar has turned down.
Really interesting. Like if
Deshaun
didn't have that no trade clause in his contract, and he basically didn't get to choose his team, he wouldn't have been able to drive up the market so much. But because basically a lot of it was like, oh, I'll go to Atlanta, or oh, I'll go to the Browns, or I think there was one other team in the mix too. Basically, he had those teams in a bidding war. So
okay, so I think this is me talking about like making him more of a pocket passer, but him being an average quarterback at passing is fine with what he brings in the run game. But the point is, if he doesn't want to be a running quarterback anymore, you're eliminating the infatuation, but you're eliminating the run game, which makes him
it's a huge component of
quarterback. Yeah, it's a huge component. You're talking about running for 1,000 yards in that 1 year. Like that's the biggest part of his game. So if you're going to make him more of a pocket passer,
I don't think Lamar would want that. I don't think I don't think Lamar personally would want a coaching staff say, "Hey, Lamar, we're going to make you run a lot less this year." I think Lamar would say, "Hey, listen, like Lamar knows he's an insanely gifted athlete, right? Like,
yeah, and
Lamar also thinks he can pass the ball much better than probably we do." But yeah.
I'm just saying that's what people have said. Like, oh, we'll bring him in and make him more of a pro style guy and make him stay in the pocket more. Well, then you're paying $50 million for a $35 million a year guy. Like, yeah, those 5-6 scrambles a game might be great, but again, what made him so great and the MVP candidate or the MVP winner was running the ball. It wasn't passing the ball. He's an average passer. And if you're only going to run the ball from 3, 4, 5 times a game, it's not enough to, again, make him be worth that contract. So I'm not doing it. And there's a lot of, doesn't even fit the offense. And then you're talking about, oh, okay, well, then run the ball with him more if that's what's going to make him worth that price. Well, guess what? You're talking about $49 million a year guaranteed. Hopefully he doesn't get injured. It's sketchy. It's a very sketchy situation. So I'm not doing it. Let the Falcons do it. Let's see. Hurts got there with a better team. How'd that work out? So getting to the Super Bowl and almost beating the Chiefs is not good enough for us. Like it's Hurts is solid.
Listen, he really didn't lose that game. Hurts played well enough to win the game.
Defense.
Yeah. I mean, like, listen, the Chiefs scored every possession of the second half, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say.
I mean, there's a punt return that basically went for a touchdown. I mean, sometimes it just sucks, but Jalen Hurts played well enough to win. I mean, that last drive, I'll say that last drive, I don't know what the fuck that Hail Mary was. I've never seen a Hail Mary come that short of the end zone.
only thing I can think of was like they were trying to get a guy to run short and then like maybe another guy runs behind him, pitches him or something does something like that. But dude, that was bad. It might have just slipped or whatever. Sneakers and boots be going to Ken. I would love to. And I
not for a preseason game, man.
You'd
want to go there for the speeches and stuff. I don't know, man. I don't feel like flying out to a place and stuff to see a speech.
I don't know if I can justify that when a couple of months after that, I'll be then flying to Dallas or to Vegas, which by the way, the Jets get Carr, I'm going to Vegas. The Jets get Rodgers, I'm going to Dallas. I've already planned on either one of those. So it'd be really fun, obviously, to see him going back or Carr to go back to Vegas, but we'll see.
This is a good point. Hurts literally dropped the ball. What you talking about, Kyle? The fumble for a touchdown. Yeah, that was a game-changing play, obviously, and that's obviously the difference of the score there. Yeah, well, it wasn't a perfect game, but Hurts is good enough to win a Super Bowl for you is the point. I wanted to comment on one thing you were saying, Joe, about offensive line seeming to be the direction that the Jets should go in at 13. I can't comment on any specific prospects because I haven't watched them yet, but when I think about where the Jets are really struggling and where they have struggled for years, they've tried so hard to make the offensive line good, but they just can't seem to stay healthy. And it's funny, you watch a team like the Chiefs or you watch a team like the Eagles. Not only do they have like 5 guys who are like pretty good all across the board, with the exception with the Chiefs with Andrew Wiley at right tackle, they're really solid all across the line, but they've also stayed pretty healthy too. Whereas the Jets, it's like revolving door. So I feel like offensive line is the area that the Jets have struggled in, even though they've tried so hard with draft picks and money to really kind of solidify that. But yeah, man, if you have a solid line, man, like it could really do wonders for your team. So I do think that's probably the direction the Jets should go, but it all depends on who are the prospects who are available there.
Yeah, and who's to say what happens in free agency? What if we land a top flight tackle somehow through trade and we want to, because we have Rodgers, it's only $13 million this year, so we decided to make a big trade for whoever, and then tackles a little bit more solidified. You don't have to reach for one at 13. Like, what if the Jets have Paris Johnson and Skronsky as their 1 and 2, but they don't view Jones as a draftable guy at 13, so then they draft a safety or a receiver or whatever it may be. Like, at anything over years, Kyle, or over the last couple of years doing the show, we should not just assume things in the draft. This is definitely going to happen, because nobody knows. If you want Carr, you want to continue to live in mediocrity. The Jets have been mediocre at quarterback, right? The last 10 years, Kyle, we've been living in mediocrity. Not the worst quarterback situation.
What's the alternative?
I said this to my friends, Kyle, and I think I said this to you before. We have the worst quarterbacks in the last 15 years in the NFL versus any other franchise. Is there any?
I said that too. I definitely said that 2 weeks ago. I asked you that question 2 weeks ago, actually, and you're like, "Yeah, I think so." There's none.
I was thinking like
we were talking like the Jaguars are a contender, but now they got Trevor Lawrence. The Bills were a contender, but now they got Josh Allen.
Even like 2008, 2009, whatever that was, like they still had Brian Leftwich. Like he was okay. The Browns had a decent year or two of Baker Mayfield. The Redskins, the Commanders now had some years of Kirk Cousins and RG3 for that electric year. Like they just had 1 year of Ryan Fitzpatrick, and past that, it's been absolute dog shit. Not just like to 23rd, to 24th, to 25th best quarterback. We're talking about 32 out of 32 for probably what, Kyle? I don't know. Ballpark 10 out of the last 15 years. We've played with the worst quarterback in the league. Like literally. It's been ridiculous. So yeah, Carr. Sure, I would love to live in mediocrity at quarterback because mediocrity at quarterback gets the Jets 11 wins next year or last year. And I know obviously it doesn't translate 1 for 1 there, but I think you're underrating Carr in terms of mediocrity. Like I think mediocrity is just like Jimmy G. Jimmy G is mediocre to me, if not a little bit less. Carr is solid. So I think there's a difference between mediocrity and being solid. Mike V says I don't think our veteran QB is our future. I would rather. So Mike, I completely get this. And I have no problem with you thinking this. And I kind of almost agree that I'd rather, if you're talking about in a vacuum, have Rodgers over Carr for the next 2 years. But, there's a lot more risk just going for Rodgers. And I think Carr could be here for 4. Why can't Carr be, if he's the 12th best quarterback in the league in a couple of years, who's to say the Jets don't build around him for the next couple of years and then draft the guy and hopefully develop him in Carr's second, third, fourth year here. So Miami Dolphins QBs, but they had a couple years of Tannehill where he was at least okay. At least okay.
There was a couple years where Tannehill was above average. Like you might not like to say it. And he was in some shitty situations too. Like Joe Philbin was a bad head coach, right? And Tannehill looked competent even with him as the coach. And dude, Tannehill's first year with Gase, hate on Gase all you want. Tannehill had a good year with Gase, right? He had almost, it was like 7.7 yards per attempt, good touchdown to interception ratio, made some huge big time throws all throughout that season. His season was ended short because he took a low hit to the knee by Calais Campbell, who was with the Cardinals at the time. So, and then Tua last year, I don't like Tua, but like Tua took a big leap last year. There's no question about that.
Kyle, you're getting some hate for the Eli Manning stuff. Let me just, and again, this is just statistics, but people are saying
he won the rings. It's because he won the rings.
Exactly. And Carr has about a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. Eli in his career has
It's like even. I think it's even.
It's 366 touchdowns to 244.
I'm thinking of his wins. His wins. He had an even win-loss record. I'm mistaken.
So just in terms of touchdowns to picks, Carr's at about 2.0 and
2-1,
and Eli is at about 1.5. So
and you could argue that Eli, he was what? He was drafted about 10 years earlier than Carr, give or take, and Eli was drafted in the era before. I think it was before they changed the the jamming rules where you can't jam 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. So you could very well argue that defense was a little bit better in Eli's earlier part of his career. I wouldn't argue with you there.
I could also argue that Eli played in a much more stable organization than Carr has.
No doubt about it. There's no question about it. I mean,
the Giants were pretty good those years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Eli had a better arm than Carr. I think people underrate Derek Carr's deep ball ability. I really think they do. His arm power. I think people will be surprised if they watch a review of his arm talent. It's not his arm talent. His arm talent is up there. It's good.
Listen, guys, truthfully, I watched a lot of Eli Manning games over the years. We live in the area. We get all his games on broadcast for free. I never really thought to myself, wow, Eli throws a great ball, man.
Mm-hmm. He threw some lollipops. His balls had a lot of
I'll tell you, towards the end of his career, and this is the same thing that happened to his brother too, his arm really died towards the end of his career.
Yeah. Don't love Tannehill, but I like him better than Jimmy G. I'm with you, Verge. Now, talk about draft compensation and all that and contracts. Jimmy G might be the better option for some people, but you're talking about right now, just in a vacuum, Carr or Tannehill or Jimmy G. I would rather have Tannehill as well. So let's see. That's over.
I didn't make and by the way, my point wasn't that Carr was overall better than Eli at like the peak of Eli's career. I just said that in terms of like pure throwing the football and like pure talent, which the point of me saying that is Carr is still relatively young. He's not even 32 yet, which for a quarterback is relatively young. And some of these guys, listen, compare Brady's 20s to his 30s. Where was he better? Was he better in his 20s or his 30s? Mm-hmm. All right. You could even argue that he was better in his 40s than he was in his 30s, right? I mean, like it's a fair argument to have. But my point is that if Carr is in a right situation with good talent around him and good coaching around him, there is something to build off of there, right? Like there's a reason why Josh Allen was drafted, despite the fact that his college film was very shaky, right? Like they saw something that they could mold. So I'm just saying, like, Carr, has 9 years as a starter. How much can he really grow? Well, if he's in a really good situation stuff, there is a really good foundation there. That was really my main point.
Yeah, and like even if it's just like, go ahead. Sorry, I've interrupted you a couple times, but even if you go from where we feel, I think we did an actual quarterback list and we said he was 12 or 13. Even if he goes from 13 to 10, like that's quite a large leap. Like again, he's been playing with a terrible organization. And don't just give me Waller, Adams of the last year or two. Again, factually, or at least statistically, I don't think stats are facts, to be completely honest. But the worst defense, a ton of coaching turnover, a bad offensive line for a lot of the parts of his career. Last year, injuries. McDaniels as his head coach, like he's solid. I'm okay with solid. I really am. I just think it's funny. And I get the Rodgers over Carr stuff, but people scoffing at Carr like he's a terrible quarterback. We don't even want him. And just, sign Mike White. Fuck Derek Carr. Like I don't know. I don't get the hate for it. I really don't. But
What is it with Carr is soft? The entire league says so. I don't know, man. Devontae Adams was pretty vocal on social media saying like
it's because he cried once, and it's because he believes in God. But it's funny, and I'm not going to get into this whole thing. There's plenty of players out there who tweet out like Bible scripture and all this stuff. But Carr is, I don't know, like, is it because he's a white quarterback who cried that makes him soft because he's a man of faith? Like, is that what we're doing here? Is that what we're bringing this shit because he likes to talk about the Bible? He's soft, and because he cried once. Because I've seen other quarterbacks cry. You know, it's happened before.
There's no Sean Marino with soft when he, was spewing tears down during the national.
Nick Sirianni soft? Oh, we can't follow this guy. He's crying before the Super Bowl.
Like, it seems like people have the exact opposite opinion of Sirianni. Actually, I mean, like, oh, Sirianni, he's tough. He's the only one who can really deal with that Philly fan base. I mean, like, what are people? Yeah,
until he loses, man? We'll see. But again, I think it's because he wears his heart in his sleeves. And he talks about God a lot. People think he's soft. Like, he can't handle the media. Like, I get the media is a little bit more abrasive here, but is the media in terms of the overall NFL, like, I get the Jets as a step up, but is it really? Like, it sucks either way. If you're losing, it's going to be great if you're winning. Just win. He'll be fine. I think people are kind of getting a little bit crazy with the Carr narrative that he's too soft to play in New York. I don't see it. And the thing is, New York is not Buffalo. New York is not Green Bay. New York is not Chicago. New York is not even New England. Like, we played what, Kyle? 3 games under 37 this year. Like, there was some the Lions game.
The Lions game was pretty cold. I was at that one. I don't remember what the temperature was. Yeah,
the Jaguars game was actually quite warm. It was just raining. The Bears game was like 45 and raining. So, like, how many games do we really play over under 37 degrees Fahrenheit, or whatever it was? And that stat people could bring it up. Just go into those games and look at the teams he was playing. So you're playing good teams with a bad defense and playoff time football. You're gonna have some bad stats. But I'm not. And even if it was true, like, oh yeah, he sucks in cold weather, based on those games, it's a 7-game sample size out of 100 and something games he's played. That's what we're buying into, to not have this guy come to the Jets. Like, we're living in la la land here in terms of trying. Again, if you have a preference or two over him, I get it. But the hate acting like he's just trash is just. It is mind-boggling because I've watched Kyle. I've watched a decent amount of his film. I'm getting really into the nitty-gritty with him, like watching him just individually, just every single game now too. And I just think he's being underrated by fans. I really do. I think you throw in Aaron Rodgers and what he's meant to the NFL the last 15 years and Carr into the same bucket. That's why people maybe are overrating or underrating him. So I don't know.
Yeah, and nobody's saying that Carr is a better quarterback than Rodgers. That's never been a discussion on here.
No. Mike White and Gardner Minshew for the 2023 season. I will see you guys in 2024 because I'm taking a season off. I'll take a sabbatical. I'll be living in darkness for 365 days instead of 4. I'm out, dude. I can't handle much more of this shit. So let's see. Sam Darnold. Are you having Darnold regrets?
No, I'm not having any regrets.
No.
I think it was Eagle who commented and said that did the Jets regret on passing on Justin Fields? And part of me wants to say kind of, but I don't know. I'm not super impressed with what I've seen of him. Like, he's far exceeded what I thought he would be as a runner. I never envisioned him being that good of a runner. But in terms of a passer, you could say I would say that the jury's still out because it's not his fault that he has a crap offensive line and doesn't really have any receivers. I mean, like, is Chase Claypool is number 1 over there? I mean, like, he's not in a good situation right now. So I think the eval on him is very much incomplete. But there's no question that he's a much better player than Zach Wilson. But again, that is literally Zach Wilson was the worst starter in the NFL last year.
No, there are definitely like higher ups like talking around the league in terms of the Bears at least questioning whether he's going to be the guy moving forward or not because they've changed their organizational structure and they brought in a new GM, new head coach, whatever. So I think Fields is like teetering on potentially being a franchise quarterback. But the problem is, again, with Fields is he's an okay passer. He definitely makes some mind-numbingly bad mistakes as a passer. The biggest appeal to him is his athleticism. But the problem with Fields, even more so than a Lamar Jackson will run out of bounds and slide. Fields takes massive shots consistently. Yeah. And he's built pretty well, but he's not Josh Allen taking hits. Like, Josh Allen has more beef to him than Justin Fields does. So, I think obviously overall in a vacuum, like you're talking about, would they rather have had Fields? Of course they would have, but that's not a thing that is kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Like, narrowed into the Jets. Like there was that article, whatever it was, like 23 or 24 GMs were polled on which quarterback they want number 2 after Lawrence that year, and like 23 out of 24 or 23 for 23 said Zach Wilson over Fields. So it's not like the Jets were in isolation thinking that Zach Wilson was the number 2 quarterback. The entire NFL thought he was the second best quarterback in that draft. And obviously there'd be Monday morning quarterbacks. People would say, "Oh, I definitely wanted Fields and all stuff," which I get. I get the argument for Fields over him because of the athleticism, but it wasn't like a bad pick at the time. It just didn't work out, obviously. So let's see.
You're not interested in Jordan Love at all, are you?
No, I would again.
I am not either.
I'll see you in 365, Kyle.
Garoppolo
is Romo 2.0. I think that's a little bit of discredit to Romo, to be honest.
Yeah. Romo was a good player, man.
Romo was solid. And somebody talk about like, the Bible. I didn't put the Bible in it. I'm not saying you. I think it's Never Ending Saga who said that. I didn't put the Bible in your mouth. I'm just saying I think that's personally what people see is crying, Bible-loving God.
Joe's point was saying that there are many players that tweet out Bible verses. Elijah Moore does that all the time. Sauce Gardner does that from time to time. Let's see. Is there another?
Michael Carter.
There's
plenty of players.
We could probably think of more. I mean, like we're just naming Jets off the top of there, but there's a lot of players who do that, right? I mean, so because Carr actually gives like sermons in churches and stuff. So it seems like, does that make him? I mean, and he's been very open about his faith for a very, very long time. I remember years ago, when it was 2012, which was the year Andrew Luck was drafted. RG3 was the second pick. And I remember them doing this special on the NFL draft and like what teams want to hear in these interviews and all that kind of stuff. And it's basically like, I remember them saying that teams want to know that football is at the top of your priorities. And I remember that I remember them interviewing Luck and probably other guys too. I don't know if RG3 was one of these guys, but I remember Luck was saying like what he said when he sat down with teams, and he's like, faith, number 1, family and football were like 2 and 3. And I think he had family above football. At least it should have been that way. But I'm almost positive it was that way. And it's like, that's acceptable. Teams will accept that. If you put faith above football and you put family above football, fine. But nothing else should come above football. Like that, period. Friends, no. All right. So like and the NFL put this out, and it's like, yeah, many players will go into their meetings and say this. So it's like, there's a lot of religious players in the NFL. Do all of them go to church every Sunday and stuff, or do all of them, really practice and try to follow the scriptures so much, read the Bible every day? Maybe not, but there are people. The point is people believe. So if Derek Carr is going to a church and giving a sermon like he's soft,
it's either that, Kyle, or because he cried. So because he cried once, now he's soft because he was frustrated by letting he wasn't like, oh, I got hit, I cried. It's like he was talking about how he let down the fans, and the fans deserve better, and he cried for the fans. Like that's why he was sad. I don't know. It's being overblown. So we're caught up in the chat. Kyle, obviously the Jets hired Todd Downing, the pass game coordinator, and we also hired their offensive line coach, who's the run game coordinator. So pretty much watch Hackett, try to see what he likes a little bit, and then watch the Titans offense. So I watched the Titans offense at least. I watched the first week, and really, it wasn't. I don't think it was overly good or bad. I don't know if there's anything like. So concepts, I had a bunch, Kyle. I'm gonna go through them really, really quick. Yankees overs, knife, mesh. They run a lot of mesh in that system as well with the Titans. The one had double switch release on the outside with picks to the outside to free up the mesh on the inside. They had 2 wolves. They had 3 hoss, 1 drive, 2 spin, 1 dog, 2 flat 7, 1 crease mesh, near double slants, hawk, Y cross, tight end screen, curl flat, rub flats, and Yankee hawk concepts. So they had plenty of pretty generic passing concepts that I charted. Run concepts, obviously, Kyle, what do we know about the Tennessee Titans offense? They're outside zone heavy. Did that obviously hold its water in week 1 of the season? Yes, it did. 7 outside zone runs. Actually, 7 outside zone runs, just strict outside zone. 3 lead outside zone, and then I counted 2 crack toss, 2 one back power, 3 counter OH, 1 counter OF, 1 duo, 1 jet sweep, which is actually to a tight end. So pretty much every team, Kyle, like everybody says, oh well, they just run outside zone. If they're an outside zone system, they're going to have crack toss. They're going to have counter. They're going to have dart runs. They're going to have gap. They're going to have trap. But it held its weight where there's pretty much mostly outside zone, maybe mid zone was sprinkled in there too. I just charted it. I went down pretty quickly. One of the things I think is pretty interesting. So that's definitely guaranteed they're going to run a lot of outside zone with the Jets. Personnel, and again, I don't know if this held its weight throughout the entire season, but they ran quite a bit of 21 and 12 personnel. They actually ran just as much combination 21 and 12. I had it charted down at 21 was 11 times in that game.
Who's the fullback?
12. So yes, that's I don't even know his name. So that's what I was going to bring up. They run again a lot of heavier sets, 20 overall in terms of like the heavier, whether it be again 21 is 2 running backs, 1 tight end, and 12 is 1 running back, 2 tight ends. So they run that quite a bit, and then 11 personnel, which is going to be the bulk for really any team. I don't think there's any team who I don't think there's one team in the NFL who doesn't run 11 the most, to be completely honest. 11 was 21, 22 was in there twice, 10 was in there 6, 13 was in there 3 times, empty was in there 4 times, and they had a wildcat snap to Derrick Henry on a direct snap. So I think that fits with what they kind of do, right? Smash ground and pound with Derrick Henry, so bringing some heavier personnel. So we said this last year with Mike LaFleur, thinking that they were going to bring in a fullback, and obviously they didn't. Now, could that be record for them? Maybe. He obviously had a good showing out against the Dolphins, but that was obviously one game. Another interesting thing about them in terms of, okay, a little bit heavier personnel, a lot more outside zone. A lot of the snaps were from under center. At least I counted. I might have missed a snap or two, just kind of going through it quickly. 30 snaps were from under center, which I feel is a little bit rare for the NFL nowadays, where only 22 came in gun. Now, is part of that Derrick Henry? That's a thought that creeps into my mind, because Derrick Henry is known to be a running back where you want him you want him on a track, speeding up a little bit before he gets the ball, which is obviously more conducive to being under center than it is in a gun formation. So is that part of the reason they ran a lot under center?
I wonder how much of it's the quarterback too. I know in the Tannehill Gase years, there was a lot of under center.
There's a lot of there's a lot of under center. There's a lot of play action, a lot of tight end involvement in the offense. A lot of the receivers in their formations is very similar to the Jets in terms of tight wide receivers. In this offense, I think there's a little bit more runoffs and picks and rubs than there was with the Jets offense. The running back on a couple of plays was a primary guy in the route concept, not just a check down, whether it be, a seam or a snake route out of the backfield or a wheel route. Again, uses a fullback, a lot of switch releases, a lot of rubs, a lot of tight formations, a lot of outside zone, a lot of under center. So I don't know if there's anything like specifically you want to ask about it, but I kind of just try to put it in a condensed format there to get a kind of like a general feel. Pretty generic offense in terms of the format, not the formations, the concepts, but you're taking anything from it in just one game. Again, a lot of heavier personnel, a lot of under center type stuff, and a lot of fullback usage or again, heavier personnel.
So you said that they ran a couple plays where the running back was the primary read in the
not necessarily the primary reads, but one of the primary reads. Like there was one, I think it was like double post wheel where he was a part of it, and then there was also one where I forget the exact concept was, but Tannehill read the outside first, and then the cornerback stayed over top of the outside route, and he ran like a snake route or a seam route out of the backfield. And was
okay. I was actually just going to ask you about that, because I know that. What was it? What season was it? Was it 2016 or 17? The Chiefs did that in New England, first game of the week, and was it Kareem Hunt who took it all the way to the house for a touchdown? It was either him or they had Tyreek in the backfield on that play. I can't remember. Then teams started using a lot more. When I was studying 2020 Packers offense, they definitely ran a decent amount of a halfback seam. I'm saying in comparison to what a lot of other teams do.
Teams. Yeah.
So, that's something that Hackett definitely did that year. I can verify that.
Yeah, you're gonna get a lot of fullback usage, a lot of tight end usage. Again, a lot of tight formation, rub routes, all that stuff with both him and Hackett. And Hackett, even more specifically than the Titans guys, was a guy to get his running backs out into routes quickly. There wasn't a lot of screens with the Titans. There's one screen I saw, but Hackett was more screen heavy. So just based on everything I'm seeing, if you're drafting fantasy, like, should I get this Jets running back? Probably, because they're going to be heavily involved. And I know he had the DUI, and I know the offense was bad this past year. When you look at the Titans offense last year and how many guys were injured, and then you have guys, and again, I'm just trying to be completely transparent here. Like, did I love the hire? No, but when you look at what happened in terms of how banged up the offensive line was, working with Malik Willis, Treylon Burks, and Robert Woods as your top 3 like options, it's like, so yeah, of course they were bad. I know
Joe
Derrick
Blewett,
Henry
big
was there,
Treylon
but
Burks fan.
yeah, the biggest you'll find. So not necessarily the best numbers, but also when you look at his history and you're talking about his history with Derek Carr, 2 years with 2 years of Todd Downing as his QB coach, that's the 2 years that, or at least 2 of those years were the years that Carr made the Pro Bowl. So he has a tie to him. He's a tie to Ryan Tannehill. So I think the Jets are kind of covering all their bases. They have familiarity with Hackett. Salah's worked with him. Obviously, there's some ties in with the offensive line coach as well. And then I'm not sure if Todd Downing has any connections to Salah necessarily, but ties to the same offense. So they're bringing, familiar guys to the offense and to the quarterbacks who they're going to be chasing. So I didn't necessarily love it, but at the end of the day, he's a pass game coordinator, not the OC. It's Hackett's the OC. These guys are just helping him run it. Now, if this was just the OC hire in general, Kyle, I'll be pretty disappointed. But again, it's not. He's an assistant to the OC. So
yeah. I saw when you were talking that Swolsey said this. I really like the experience being brought into the coaching room. Yeah, it seems like the Jets kind of need this at this point. I do think that Saleh brings like good leadership qualities. And one thing that I seem to like about Saleh is I do feel that and this is something that I think that he excels at with like if you go straight whiteboard work, okay, this play is going to work against this type of defense in this situation against this down and distance. I think someone like Rex Ryan would beat Robert Saleh. But in terms of like talent evaluation and seeing like, okay, this player can do this, and we think that we see this player in this role, I think that Saleh excels in that area. So I think that, having, other coaches that are experienced, because Saleh's kind of young and this is his first time around as a head coach, just a couple of years in, and, somebody like, Mike LaFleur, we saw that, he's obviously quite inexperienced in the role that he was in. I do think that it's good that they're bringing in some veteran presence. So I tend to agree with what Solzy said there. So. Am I muted or are you muted? I think you muted yourself, Joe.
Oh, sorry. Hey, as long as Carr gets his wins, I couldn't care.
My bad, dude.
No, that's okay. He could be the stay puffed marshmallow man for all I care. And again, I really think, because I haven't seen any other evidence that, other than, again, he believes in God and he cried once, because you watch in the pocket. Now, does any quarterback like pressure? No. And Carr could lose his mechanics a little bit in terms of stepping up into pressure, but he'll step up into pressure and take a massive shot to deliver the ball downfield. Hold on. He's not a pansy throwing the ball.
Let me ask you a question. All right. Now I think I might be understanding where people are coming from now. I think it finally clicked in my head. What instance are you talking about when Carr was crying? Like, was he crying on the sideline, or was he crying in a post-game press conference? What was the context?
The big crying thing that I remember of Carr, and I could be wrong, maybe there was another instance, but they lost a close game and in overtime or in the fourth quarter, and then after the press conference, or in the press conference after the game, he was talking about how disappointed he is for the guys in the locker room who come to work there so hard every day, and we're losing games. We had higher expectations, and for the fans. And he started crying. Okay, it's would I rather have my quarterback be like fucking the leader of like the 300 in the movie? Yeah, sure. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. Like Afram said, if he's winning games, I couldn't give two fucks less if he cries after every game. I don't care if he cries every snap.
Okay. I remember something that was kind of going viral on Twitter, and I feel like this was 3-4 seasons ago, and I feel like it was the Raiders versus the Seahawks, and Carr had an awful day, meaning that not that he played awful, but he was getting sacked repeatedly. Like, he was getting hit so many times, and I remember his body language looked quite bad, and I don't know that he was crying during the game or whatever, but he certainly looked like he was begging for the refs for calls or whatever, and I don't know if he was crying then, but I seem to think that I seem to remember that people were implying that or whatever. So maybe that's what people are talking about. Like, oh, you're crying in the game because the game's not going your way, and maybe you can't take the hits, right? Like, who are you to play quarterback if you can't take some hits? Maybe that's what people are referring to. I'm not really sure. But if what they're referring to is what you're talking about, like, dude, there's nothing wrong with you crying because, like, you want to win and you want other people, like, sometimes, like, you work your ass off and like it just doesn't work out really. Like, dude, I played so after I officially retired from playing like actual football, full contact type things, I played in a flag football league for 4 straight years. All the teams I played on were garbage, man. And I made it to the All-Star game all 4 years that I played, and like everybody
Kyle
was
Crowder
always
didn't make the playoffs.
never made the playoffs. Every team was always trying to recruit me to play on their team or whatever. But like I was like freaking bitter, man. Like I never cry, but I was definitely freaking pissed after a lot of those games. Like, man, like I drive out all the way here on a weekend to get our ass kicked during the game. Like, you know, it's fine to get emotional and you know, you work hard and you play hard and you lose. Like I don't know, it's natural, but I don't know.
Blitz crew, Kamar, Chargers make Saints less like they are. I think if they and I could be wrong here. If they cut every single contract that is like positive to their cap right now, they're still $40 million over the cap, Kyle. And then they have to trade all of their good players to get under the cap. And I think Michael Thomas has like a $50 to $60 million cap hit next year. The salary cap, you could delay the inevitable for years. You could delay it from 15 to 16 to 17 to 18 to 20 to 21. It's going to hit you. And the Saints last year, it hit this year. It's hitting in 24. It's guarantee you the Saints did not want to trade Chauncey Gardner-Johnson for a 5th-round draft pick or whatever it was. You know, like the cap is real. You can just delay it for quite a bit.
Yeah.
So it's hitting them. They don't.
The people out there who think that the cap is like not a real thing. So I got a buddy. He's a very nice guy. His name is Miguel Banzan, and he's a Patriots fan. You can follow him on Twitter at Pat's Cap. He's got, you know, tens of thousands of followers. You know, he's followed by all the big, you know, sports media personalities who are Patriots writers and things like that. And he has the Pat's Cap down to a science. He has the NFL salary cap thing down to a science. He knows all the little intricacies of, you know, a contract and a bonus and this and that. And I interviewed him back when I did my show years ago. And I asked him a straight up question like, okay, there's like a lot of people out there that think, oh, the cap is crap. It's not a real thing. Right. And like you could just finagle it and switch this thing in there and switch this thing there. And I was like, you know, is that actually like true? And I was like, if a team tried to sign a player and they were like technically over the cap, like could that even work? He said, if they tried to submit that to the league, they would literally be denied. It is not crap. Like there's a reason it is what it is. And guys, like there's a reason why when teams they have a lot of cap in a certain season, they seem to be making a push. There's a reason why they sign more players, and there's a reason why teams like certainly
look at the Jets in 2009 2010. You look at all those contracts in those years and we're like, we are fucked in 2012 2013 because all the contracts are backloaded, and again the Saints are going to be in cap hell for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's a reason why those 2010 Jets fell off a little bit. They had a lot of guys on one-year contracts. You know, they had to eventually prepare to pay for Mark Sanchez. They had to eventually give Darrelle Revis another contract. Well, they did. They did give him a new contract in 2010. But you know, like a lot of those one-year guys, like you know, Jason Taylor and some of those other guys. There's a reason why they didn't re-sign some of those guys like the very next year. And like, oh, you're getting 2011 was Plexico Burress on a $3 million deal, right? Like, you know, you had to go get some like little bargain basement things. I mean, the cap is definitely a legit thing. It, you know, you can maybe delay it, right? It's just like when the government prints money, like, you know, there will be a day reckoning sometime, right? Like, you know, there's just, you know, you could try to move around some numbers and stuff, but it will affect you eventually.
Yeah. You can just keep pushing down the road, but it's going to hit like Mosley and all that stuff's going to hit him. Carr going to Carolina is almost a guarantee per Boomer Esiason. I don't know if Boomer's ever broke.
Does he really have like legit sources? No. Wasn't it Boomer a couple years ago, Joe, that said, I have a good source that said Chandler Jones is going to the Jets for a 1st-round pick. Right? I'm almost positive it was him.
I don't think he's ever been right on anything, but nonetheless, are the next 3 options after him is if Carr is still there, he would be 2, and then 3. You know, people will say Lamar Jackson. I don't think it's going to happen. Dak, I don't think it's going to happen. If it was one of those guys, okay, maybe we can talk about them. But realistically, if Rodgers is gone, Carr is probably gone after that. And the next 2 options are Tannehill and Jimmy G. And I'd rather have Tannehill than Jimmy G. But if it's not one of those guys, like, I don't know, freaking put down a little bit too much for Dak. Like, do something. I just can't handle Jimmy G. Let's see. Carr has been a starting quarterback, and he's only missed a few games. Only really – did he miss 1, 2?
He missed 1 at the end of 2016. I think that's the year he broke his leg. And I know he missed like 2 this year because he was benched, so he wasn't hurt.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's missed any other than those.
Yeah, I can't think of any either. Let's see. Do I want Corey Davis back? It depends. I'm not getting rid of Corey Davis just to get rid of Corey Davis. Now, let's say Rodgers does come here. You sign Alan Lazard for $11 million a year. Are you keeping Alan Lazard and Corey Davis? No. But at the same point, like, I'm not just getting rid of him and saying, oh, well, hopefully we can get a guy. So go to the wide receiver class this year in free agency. It's balls, Kyle. So Corey Davis, I think when he's on the field, he's worth his contract. But the problem is he's missed 4, 5, 6 games each of the last 2 years. So that's the problem. So yes, I would want him back at this point, but do they get a replacement? Is it Lazard? Is it the people talk about Jacoby Meyer? But Jacoby Meyer, correct me if I'm wrong, Kyle, plays primarily in the slot, and you're planning on making Elijah Moore, or kind of growing him into the player we think he could be. He should be in the slot. So then you're signing a guy to be in the slot and contest with Elijah Moore. Like, you're just kind of offsetting your assets there. So I would say yes, but if Rodgers is here, it might be Lazard. But past that, I think Corey Davis should be back. And it's not just saying, oh, Corey Davis is worth the $10.5 million necessarily. I just don't think you're getting much better in the free agency market. It's very, very bad this year for receivers.
By the way, reviewing the whole Lazard Corey Davis thing, we were talking about that, and we were mostly comparing them as receivers. But when I was kind of reviewing some of the 2020 Packers film and offense, I kind of remembered that Lazard is a better blocker than I remembered, which kind of makes sense. He's a big dude. So, if you're concerned with losing Corey Davis because you're losing a good run blocker, I think that Lazard steps in that role pretty admirably.
Well, yeah, like even if, let's say, they're near the same contract, I think Lazard on the field is not as good of a player as Corey Davis is. And I don't think either are great, obviously. But having Lazard for 16, 17 games instead of having Corey Davis for 12 is obviously a large part of the factor too. So in a vacuum, probably Lazard over Davis. But again, you see free agents getting some ridiculous contracts. So you might be talking Lazard. I think Spot Track, wherever, has him at like $14, $15 million. And there's no way I'm paying that for Lazard. Just keep Davis for 10.5.
Yeah.
So let's see. Keep going on.
Without the guaranteed money.
This guy is nuts. We have an O-line, just wasn't healthy. We can maybe use a tackle to compete for starting job, and no matter the vet you bring in. I don't know if he's talking about you, Kyle, in terms of the offensive line.
He must be talking about me.
Laken Tomlinson was a
Absolute
very,
garbage.
very overpriced, and he was garbage last year.
He got a little bit better as the season went on, but he was horrible all year.
Let's assume health for ABT. Okay, you have ABT, you re-sign McGovern, he's okay. Laken Tomlinson last year was not just okay, he was disappointed for his contract. He was terrible last year. That's your left guard. Your left tackle might retire, and your backup option at your left tackle right now hasn't played a game in 2 years. So your left tackle is question mark. Your left guard is trash, and hopefully he bounces back to average. An average for $17 million is obviously not ideal. And your right tackle at this point in time, again, assuming Brown retires and Beckton's left tackle, your right tackle is Max Mitchell, who was a 4th-round draft pick who played barely okay for a couple of games. He got overrated by fans. He was not good last year when he was playing. He was just good relative to expectations, which was a 4th-round draft pick. So you have question at left tackle, question at right tackle. You don't know who your center is right now, and don't just give me, just draft player X in round 3 and rely on him to protect Rodgers, because Jets won't do that. Rodgers won't want to do that. And then past that, your left guard was trash. So let's not act like the offensive line's in a good spot right now. There's no way it is. I wish it could be, but
he was actually I just pulled up he replied to us. He said apparently he was talking about somebody else in the comments.
Okay, well, hopefully I disagree with you then, Dan. I just proved your point. The offensive line is not solidified right now. I think we all know that. But that's one of the JD's flaws right now, is he poured so much assets into that group right now, Kyle, and it's a massive question mark. Minus ABT right now in your line, who are you confident in? Like, yeah, we might, we have a couple of guys. McGovern's okay. Laken Tomlinson, let's say he bounces back to average. But then you're still paying $17 million a year for average. You still have a center who's average, getting probably overpaid for it. You have a very, very good right guard with 2 massive question marks at tackle. You literally don't know who they're going to be right now. Like, is it Brown? Is it Beckton? Is it Mitchell? We don't know.
And if we could take just a little pause, really listen very carefully to what I'm saying. Don't assume I'm saying something that I'm not. AVT, because of the shitty injury situation that we were in last year, had to play a bunch of spots where ideally he's not supposed to be, right? Like, AVT played 7 games total, but how many of them were not actually at right guard? So then there's also the question mark of, yeah, we really like AVT, and he's grown a lot as a player and stuff, so it seems, but like, are we absolutely convinced that he's a Pro Bowl guard yet, or an all-pro guard yet? There's no doubt we see the potential there, but it's like, is he even that yet? So like, he's the one question, like he's the one thing that we're not at all worried about, but like, is he even as good as we think? Like, it's still a little bit of a question mark there, and he's coming off a big injury. So, I mean, like the Jets offensive line has potential. Like if Becton, I mean, like I'm hearing they're not going to pick up his 5th-year option. Man, if that guy could ever stay healthy, there's his potential's through the roof.
What is a 5th-year option? Like $15 million or $14 million, some shit like that.
The 11th overall pick, so it's a lot.
You can't pick up that for Becton. There's no way.
You can't. The guy missed, he's missed like 30 something consecutive games, right? Or just about that. So it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well, what? Do you count week 1 from 2021? Like, even if you counted, okay, we're talking about 16, 17, we're talking about 33 games in a row he's missed. It's like, oh, yeah, he's fine. He's a left tackle. Don't worry about it. Like, okay, all right, the glass half full.
It needs a lot of work is the point. The offensive line needs a lot of work. And if you're Joe Douglas, you have to be frustrated because he has really tried really hard to make it work.
June Smith, sorry I'm late. I'm sorry you're late as well, June. Who do you guys think will sign? I need to know y'all opinion.
Is he talking about other people other than the quarterback?
No. I'm assuming he's talking about quarterback. To me right now, I think the betting favorite is Rodgers. I think that's where the Jets
I did check the odds. Was it yesterday or a day or two ago? And according to what is it? betonline.org. I don't even check. I don't really gamble like that, so I don't really check these websites. But the Jets were the favorite to land Rodgers on that website, and it was like over 26-27% chance. They were not the favorite to land Carr. They were like 2nd or 3rd in the running for Carr. I can't remember who. I think the Panthers might have been the top. I can't remember. But yeah, the Jets currently on betting websites are the favorite to land Rodgers.
Yeah, NY Jets fan, I prefer Jacoby Myers, and you might like him as a player more than Davis and Lazard, but to me, NY Jets fan is he plays mostly in the slot, and then you're taking Elijah Moore out of the slot, where I think he can actually be a solid player, and putting him back on the outside. It's just you're not elevating the talent you have on your team. So while I might prefer him 1-to-1 over those guys, you got to think about fit in the scheme as well, and he doesn't fit necessarily very, very well here. So past that, somebody's saying that Zach will sort it out. I'm going to pull up the name, and then Joe Campione said that he's the biggest busted NFL history in terms of quarterbacks, which he's up there. He's definitely up there. So I don't have faith in Zach sorting it out because he was doing DoorDash and has a good head on his shoulders. I think he's a smart kid. I think he studies a lot. I think he has the drive. I think he has the want to. But when the ball is snapped, he loses it. He does. He severely overthinks plays. One bad play, you go on a fucking avalanche ride down a mountain with him after that. Like he's bad. He's very bad. So let's see.
Sucks to say it, but it's the truth.
If Parrish, Johnson, Scroncy, and Branch gone, thoughts on a trade down? Again, like I feel like I'm the worst streamer in terms of, oh, we can do this or that guy's there or that. Like, we don't know who is there in the trade down. Do I like Jordan Addison? Do I like another tackle? Do I like this late tackle to rise at the combine? Like, I have no idea on February 16th if I would want to trade down. Right now, in a vacuum, if I have to answer this question, if Johnson and Scroncy are gone, I would be okay with a trade down to try to fill some more holds, because at the end of the day, the Jets we were always so far both on the mid-level talent on the roster and then also like that superstar talent, Kyle. I think we have that superstar talent right now. I think we can add another superstar or two on the team. But the Jets still need to build depth at certain positions, and even starters, like who are our linebackers, who are our safeties, who are our tackles, who are our backup tackles, who is our number 3 receiver if Corey Davis is gone, who is our number 4 receiver? Is it Cobb? Is it Berrios? Berrios better not be here on an $8 million cap hit. So they need to build out the depth of this roster as well, because again, I think they've landed on some of the superstars. I want 1 or 2 more. I really don't think it's probably Sauce and Q, so you want maybe 1 or 2 more, but still, Gary Wilson could be a superstar as well. But yeah, no, I would say trade down if it's not one of the tackles. The thing with Branch too is, to what I saw from him, he's more of a strong safety or a slot guy. I didn't really see him playing high in his highlights. That was just highlights. Can completely change when I watch him in a couple of weeks, wherever it is. So
you almost have to wonder if some of these comments are just people kind of trolling or whatever. I want to assume that this person, Blitz crew, is sincere. Can Mims become that possession receiver? No.
No. The thing about Mims, dude, I like Mims a lot coming out of Baylor. We both did, Kyle, but His route running significantly dropped off from his first year, and I know that's a part of the coaching staff as well. And just like the most simple things, like the most like generic YouTube highlights things people
Lost
figure
all
out.
confidence in his hands. He used to be
Dude,
a hands catcher at Baylor. Now he's a straight up body catcher. Like the dude will jump, like significantly high in the air to catch a very high ball into his body.
He wants to cradle every single ball from his nipples to his belly button and just catch it in there and jump and do whatever else you can do. And at Baylor, he was fucking grabbing balls 13 yards outside of his frame, doing jumping in the air and falling over. Like, it was crazy. His
toe touching to keep his feet in bounds. Yeah, no, he looks like a very much a different player. And his route running is like it's. I don't want to compare him to Stephen Hill because, I mean, like, Stephen Hill did have like, I guess like one good game, like his first game of his career or whatever. Stephen Hill was, I would say, definitely a worse receiver overall and definitely a worse route runner. But I do remember my brother making and if you look at their spider graphs on mockdraftable.com, they are pretty similar in terms of height, weight, speed, all that kind of stuff. Mims and Stephen Hill, even though Mims had like a better 3-cone drill and stuff. There is a Stephen Hill comparison there in terms of like, just no clue, no nuance for route running. But the way that Mims, at least last year, was playing, he assumed he was Brandon Marshall and that he could just body guys and like throw them aside and create a little bit of separation that way. And he's just not that big. He's not that strong. He's not that physical. Listen, he's a very willing blocker, but you ain't Brandon Marshall big, man.
No.
It just didn't work for him.
Yeah, so still, like, I thought you were agreeing with it. I don't know. Lakin is here to stay, 100%. So that's a lock. McGovern isn't here right now. So center right now is a question mark. Right guard, okay, that's ABT. But you have question at center. If you're relying on Becton to start this entire year, that's on you. But to me, that's still a massive question mark. Fant is not under contract right now for the Jets, so he's not on the team at this current moment. So he's a question mark. So you have question mark left tackle, question mark right tackle, a bad left guard who's overpaid, nobody at center. So you literally have 3 out of 5 positions. You have no idea who's going to be the opening day starter. So there's a lot to figure out in the offensive line. Again, if I don't know if it's just me, Kyle, there's 167 of us, including you and I in here. I don't know if I'm one out of 167, but I'm not relying on Becton to be the starter for the entire year at left tackle for the Jets. And his rookie year was great. It was. But let's not act like he was amazing. Like, he was very good, but I think he gave up 6 or 7 sacks that year. It's not like he was elite all-pro.
Was it that much? Tackle. I mean, like, yeah. I definitely remember Mario Addison got him for a couple, and some other people got him. So yeah, no, he had a pretty long way to go as a pass protector, and even in the run game, he was flawed. You outlined it so much in your reviews that. Yeah, he created an immense amount of movement on outside his own runs, but a lot of it was just throwing the guys. But sometimes when you do that, the problem is like you're losing control of the guy, and then he can get back in for a late angle tackle. And like if you were to control him a little bit more, he could kind of give the running back a little bit more space to like spring a run and actually break the run. So there's no doubt that he's extremely powerful, and there's a lot to be had there. But yeah, he's still kind of raw.
I want to get to a couple of questions. I got to hop off after that, and I got to promote something else, another podcast that's coming.
Which podcast is that?
I'll talk about in a second.
Okay.
So wide receiver is definitely an underrated need. Wilson, Moore, Davis, when healthy, are the only reliable receivers. Exactly. And who's to say Davis is going to be here, beloved piece? So I agree with you. And Barrios is cut, so you might have Wilson. Okay, great rookie year. Moore, who had a severely disappointing rookie year, and then I have question marks at 3, 4, 5, 6 behind that. So wide receiver is definitely an underrated need. LaFleur ruined Moore also 100% running too vertical, putting him on the outside. So I think when people look at the Jets like skill talent on offense, they overlook Moore a little bit. I think if Moore is more what he was rookie year and Ole Miss Moore could be a very solid starting receiver in this league still if he's used correctly. He has time to bounce back. He wasn't so far gone. Blitz says center market, it's thin, draft one or sign one. To me, veteran quarterback, whether it be Carr or Rodgers, you sign one before you go into free agency, Kyle. Or before you go into the draft. That's at least my position. I don't think you bring in Rodgers and then say, hey, I hope John Smith's available in the second round. Oh, shit, he's not there. I hope this guy's available in the third. Oh, shit, he's not there. We'll sign some scrap heap guy for $3 million a year. Like, no, you need to figure out your offensive line mostly before you even go into the draft, in my opinion. You don't fuck around and say, oh, this third round guy's going to work out. That's a high hit rate in the NFL, third round centers. So, I would re-sign McGovern or bring another guy back. If you draft a guy to develop him and he outplays McGovern, great. stardom, but I don't think you can go into the draft with no starting center. That would be a massive mistake to make. Beckham gave up 7 sacks to rookie. Thank you. I knew it was somewhere right around there. So good, but not amazing. Let's see. Two guys went by. Yeah, so I'm doing a podcast with it's gonna be once a week with Buffalo Jets fan who is a quick up and riser from in the YouTube world. Who's killing it right now. It's going to be, I think we're calling it the Joe and the Buffalo is the pod's name, and it's going to be, it's a Patreon. It's Patreon exclusive. We obviously both pour a ton of work into both of our works, and me with the film and all that stuff. So taking 40 minutes to an hour a week to do a podcast. It's a cup of coffee. I think it's $4 or $5 a month, and you're gonna get 4 pods. Me and Buffalo Jets fan talking. So I'll put a link in the description of this show. I haven't yet because I just got the link, and I'll put it in the chat as well, or in the comments. So if you like his work and you like my work, then go subscribe to the podcast I'll be doing once a week. Is there anything else in here? Yeah, Kyle. So any closing comments, and then I gotta hop off because unfortunately, not like normal people, I don't get to work 7 to 3, 8 to 4, 9 to 5. I get to work at midnight when everybody else is sleeping. So I gotta sleep a little bit.
Yeah. Well, proud of you and happy for you. Hopefully you and Buffalo Jets fan crush it, which you guys already are. So I don't expect anything different. In terms of anything else to add, they need to address the offensive line stuff early. Joe Douglas really needs to explore the trade market there, because I'm not so sure there's a lot of good stuff to be signing in free agency. But yeah, he needs to be aggressive. Like, for example, the Chiefs, Mahomes got killed in that Super Bowl against the Bucks. Okay, so what did the Chiefs do? They went out and traded for Brown from the Ravens. They gave a first-round pick to do that. But then they also invested heavily. Creed Humphrey was a second-round pick, if I'm not mistaken. And they got lucky getting Trey Smith in the 6th round. But, you're talking they added, 3 high-quality offensive linemen, and that really kind of changed the dynamic of that team. And they signed Joe Thuney as well. And they paid a boatload of money to get Joe Thuney. Right? Like, he was day one signing, crazy break the bank contract by he was like the highest paid guard by a huge margin. So the Jets need to be aggressive. I think that's really now the problem is like you don't already have your quarterback. So if you're gonna have to sign Rodgers, how much assets are you gonna have to trade? This is the predicament. All right, but anyway, I have nothing else to say.
And the good thing about their cap space going forward is I know they don't have a lot this year, but I think they have like right around $100 million in 2024, so they can move a lot of stuff around. If you go for Rodgers, you're going to take a lot of that cap space and push it to 2020, 25, 26. We're going to suck those years. We're going to go all in for Rodgers now and for the Super Bowl. But nonetheless, any explicit content are not safe for work content. I'll get Buffalo to post some nudes in there, I guess. Broadcasting with Buffalo Jet Fantana would kick ass. Yeah, I don't know if necessarily broadcasting, but we'll be doing a podcast. So we're recording on Sunday. So I'm not sure when it'll be out, Monday, Tuesday, whatever it may be. But make sure to go and sign up. Again, $5 a month is what, Kyle? Literally an expensive cup of coffee from Starbucks. That's all it is. So if you want to kill some time or you enjoy listening,
all the inflation nowadays, it's not really that much.
Yeah, exactly. So we appreciate you guys, Kyle. I will see you in 2 weeks if the Jets do it. And listen, everybody, if the Jets get a quarterback, I will be streaming as soon as possible. So either that exact minute or that day, I will get out a podcast. Hopefully, it's Kyle with me as well, but I will see Kyle maybe in 2 weeks, maybe in 3 days, maybe tomorrow, maybe in 5 days. I don't know, but we will see you guys later.